you see, I have not talked about any female disciples at all. And this may make you wonder why, what happened to the female? The reason is very simple. The convention of the time was so severe, there is no way young girls or young ladies could approach Ramakrishna, forget about communicate with him or talk to him. The restrictions were very severe. So none of the very kind of young ladies were able to come to Ramakrishna, but don't worry, because this Ramakrishna produced this fireball called Vivekananda, and he threw him in the West. And do you know who were the biggest followers, disciples of Vivekananda? Female, the liberated American women. They loved Vivekananda. In fact, you hear about the groupies, with the pop singers, they got groupies. The first ever recorded groupie, I think, were around Vivekananda. When he became very famous in the United States, when he gave this first talk in Chicago, at the Parliament of Chicago, Parliament Religion in Chicago in 1893, you see, when a person of spiritual, when a person opens his mouth about his own spiritual experience, it produces tremendous resonance in the audience. And there were about 3,000 people in the audience, the cream of America, all these kind of very sophisticated young and old people, the major personalities of USA were sitting in the audience. There were a lot of young, dynamic, liberated American women in the audience too. And when the Swami stopped speaking, they were charged up. Just like, forget about pop singers, charging up. They were charged up. And they started climbing over benches to reach out to Swami. They wanted, like literally, just slowly, the whole group, like zombies coming, like that. Climbing over benches and coming towards Vivekananda. And there was an old lady who was old enough to realize she mustn't climb benches. She just sat and wrote in a diary, "My boy, if you can resist this, then you are truly a god." You see, they are very beautiful, very dynamic women, and they would immediately steal his heart, surely. And they're all coming to, and they would like to touch him as well, physically, or touch his clothes. Like you can't believe, but this is the power of spirituality. It will draw people. So they used to climb over. And as this elderly woman, wrote in a diary, "My boy, if you can resist this, then you are a god." And this Vivekananda resisted all of them without any difficulty. But the people who maintained, who looked after, who promoted the work of Swami Vivekananda in the West were women. So what Ramakrishna could not achieve, his disciple managed to do in no uncertain way. He relied on women to carry the message, become the major carriers. The major disciple of Swami Vivekananda was Sister Nivedita. You see, and again a dynamo, a lioness, a real lioness. So this compensation about male-female ratio was sorted out by the disciple of Ramakrishna, if not by him. But there were a lot of other women who are linked with the story of Ramakrishna. In the second part, I'm going to touch on some of them. I think I'm going to take a break now. You see, as we mention females who, kind of encountered Ramakrishna, I think it's necessary for me to bring out a story of one particular female disciple, if you like. I said the young women were not allowed to come near Sri Ramakrishna because the convention of the time prevented that. Not that he was segregating. One very elderly widow came across Ramakrishna. I'm going to do a little story about this particular person. North of Dakshineshwar, about 4 miles north of Dakshineshwar, on the bank of the river Ganga, is another temple. The temple was built by a reasonably well-to-do person who passed away, and his wife, widow, stayed in the temple. This is standard practice in Hinduism. A widow will spend her rest of her days in meditation and worship and so on. And she had a companion who also lived in the temple. The name of the companion is Agormani. They were both devout ladies, spending their time in meditation and worship and leading a very simple life. Agormani had very little income. I think something like 1 rupee per month. That income. That was her pension. Because her husband had passed away. Now these two ladies, or this Agormani, used to visit Ramakrishna from time to time, and Ramakrishna was immediately attracted to her, and he would feel tremendous affinity for this lady. So a kind of relationship developed between this very elderly lady and Ramakrishna, Agormani and this lady. And then Ramakrishna would say, she had a little bit of money, so she would buy some sweets from the market and give it to Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna knew her financial status, so he said, "Don't buy all these things." So he was giving her a menu. He said, "Buy those desiccated coconut, take some molasses, join them, make little bowls, and bring 1 or 2 bowls every time you come here." And he said, oh, by the way, I like this curry, he said. So he was asking her, giving her menu of what he liked, the food he liked. And this lady with folded hands said, yes, this gentleman, this holy man has asked me for curry and asked me to make these bowls with desiccated coconut, topra pak, Gujarati. So I'll do it and take it. So she started making this and bringing, and then next, make this curry for me. And this lady was getting a bit distressed. She said, I'm coming here to meet a holy man. The only interest he seems to have is in food. He's giving me different menus and making different requests. This doesn't sound like a holy man. There's only one Gujarati word that would kind of express this very clearly. I'm sure there are Bengali words as well. He said, this sadhu is a khaudro. Just asking for food and he's got no other interest and no religion, no spiritual, just asking for food and menu and layout. She was getting a bit irritated. Never mind. Let me tell you about the lifestyle of this elderly lady. And you see why she deserves special, kind of place in the names of all the disciples of Ramakrishna. You get up early before the sun rises. They would get up, take a bath in the river, and right from early morning they would sit in front. This lady was devoted to the idea of God as baby Krishna. So she had a little image of baby Krishna in a little room. The room just had a mat, and she used a brick as the pillow. That was that poor. And one or two little bits of vessel with a little bit of food stuff, and that's her worldly assets. So you get up very early, take a bath, pick some flowers from the garden outside, offer it to the deity, sit in front of it and repeat, do the rosary, do the mala, and repeat the name of Krishna. Tremendous love for Krishna. And imagine she has done this for years and years and years, maybe 30, 40 years in that room, repeating the name of Krishna and telling beads. You see, now this is the story. This, take it as you like, and you'll see who gives it, kind of acceptance, who gives it credibility. She keeps doing this. One day, she opens her eyes and she feels that somebody is next to her, and she looks, and there she sees next to her baby Krishna, young Krishna, smiling, looking back at her. Now she can't believe her eyes. Has this child walked in? Some neighbor's child walked in? Who is this? And you see, but the thing is this, look, if we are ever fortunate to have a real spiritual experience of a personality coming in front of us, we will know. We don't need credentials. You don't need somebody else to give accreditation, like Middlesex University. It comes naturally. The hair on your hand will stand up. The hair on your body will stand up. Your whole being will feel uplifted as soon as you come in face to face with the reality of this nature. You know. You don't need somebody else to just verify it for you. You know. She knew this is Krishna. Of course, she goes mad. The object of her worship is now very visible, sitting next to her. Little child, smiling and looking back, coming alive. She doesn't know what to do. She lifts up the Krishna. She can't even wear her sari properly. It's kind of in a disheveled state. Carries Krishna on her shoulder, runs 4 miles with the sari hanging loose, running. She's completely taken in. How can, look, I've got him. She's running. She ran to Ramakrishna Dakshineshwar all the way. And she said in her own words, she said, I could see the little dangling legs of Krishna with the kind of the soles of his feet, kind of light blue. I can read that. And they were dangling in front of me, and I ran. The moment I came, the temple, I was in this kind of very excited state. And everybody didn't know what's happened because nobody can see that. And this Ramakrishna can see what's going on. So he asked her to calm down. Calm down, mother, calm down. And she said, look, look. And that guy jumped up, left her shoulder, and went. This used to happen standard. Look, bit of magic. Eh? He would run and disappear into Ramakrishna. He would run out of Ramakrishna, come out as a child again. And again come and play with her and climb on her side. No, you have to carry her on the side like that. He would insist that she carries him. And this would happen all the time, going on. And the child is with her all the time. He won't go away. So he has to take him back. And in her own words, when she describes how she lived with Krishna, you can know this is not make-believe. She said, at night, when I wanted to sleep, this Krishna wanted to sleep next to me. Little boy Krishna wanted to sleep next to me. And the only thing I had was brick for a pillow. So she said, I would extend my arm and say, lie on that. And Krishna would happily lie there. And then when I would serve this Krishna with some sweet that I had, which was very harsh, because she was a very poor lady with very harsh, very difficult, harsh edges, Krishna would bite into it because he would demand sweets. He would bite and it might bleed a little bit. And I would feel, cry, how dare I give Krishna such stuff? And I feel really distressed. Why can't I give him better? And he would demand, give me more. It was really, and the language she used, she said, I would go into the wood to pick up firewood to cook. That's where they got their fuel. And this Krishna would come with me, hanging on to me. And if I bend down to jump on my back, look, real stuff in this day and age. Then he'll climb down, he'll pick up a little twig and say, will this do? Part of the firewood. He said, yes, my son, that will do, bring it. She played with him for days. This lasted for a few months, living constantly in that kind of, can you imagine tears of joy flowing constantly? This woman was in a very severe state of affairs, serious state. And then after some time, disappeared. And she felt down, she was crestfallen. Wow, where is my Krishna? She is very, annoyed. Because once you are in touch with God as a person interacting with you and suddenly disappears, like Meera, you become highly distressed. That's what Meera did the rest of her life, singing, crying for Krishna, where are you? And this, she ran to Ramakrishna and said, disappeared. What happened? Have I done something wrong? Ramakrishna said, no, mother. The reason why it disappeared is for your own good. This experience of God is so dynamic, normal human beings cannot tolerate it for a very long period. They will die. The body cannot tolerate the spiritual experience you are having. It is to save your life that he has disappeared. Otherwise you will die. Again, this is recorded with other great bhaktas. With Chaitanya, for example, he used to actually, instead of sweat, he used to get, for every pore of his skin, blood would pour out. When the devotion becomes that intense and you are able to experience God, the body shudders, it begins to crack up. You need a very solid body, very special body in order to absorb these very dynamic experiences. She said, Mother, that's why he has disappeared. Don't worry. When your time comes, he will be back with you. You know what we mean by when your time comes? When you need him most, when you are giving up the body, he will be there for you, Mother. But the story, there's a lovely part. You see, I told you, when we study Ramakrishna, we don't only study Ramakrishna with his disciple, but we study the interaction between disciples. Now here is this rustic old lady babbling about God as Krishna that she could view and she could see and she could interact with. And here is this great rationalist who is going to challenge Ramakrishna day and night, Vivekananda. So one day, this is typical Ramakrishna, he brought them together. And then he told the lady, Mother, tell him about your experiences. And the lady looked at me and said, but you told him never to disclose this to anybody, because Ramakrishna said, don't disclose this. You said, let me tell you about spiritual experience. They are so intimate, so personal. When you not because we are hiding or mystical or magical, because they are so intimate, you don't wish to discuss it too much with other people. This is the reason why people who experience will normally not discuss them, or they are told not to discuss them, because their power disappears. Otherwise, if you keep it to yourself, every time you think of it, your hair stands on end. You feel, But once you start dissipating it like that, the power disappears. So you are asked to keep it intimate. It's like suppose you have kind of very close friendship with some other person. Certain things you'd have, discussion you have, you would like to keep it intimate. You don't put it on email and let everybody see it. Try and keep it low, private. So this relation with God is that private and that intense and that intimate. It is not meant for public, release. So she was told by Ramakrishna, don't mention this, keep it to yourself. And then suddenly he says, tell Vivekananda about your experiences. But she said, but you told me not to. No, with him you can, she said. Carry on. You wanted to see what happens. He loved this kind of games. He used to do that all the time. Ask this disciple, sometimes you'd get two of them and say, now debate about this and that. God with whom, God without whom. They will start debating. Then he'll give marks. So here is the devout old lady. Now, once you start talking about your private experience, and she knows this, Vivekananda is great, very great personality, very powerful, very rational, college educated, university educated, very dramatic, and everybody bows down to him, such a powerful. And she's feeling a bit kind of shy. But in her own kind of stuttering way, she manages to express, right, this is what happened. And then Krishna came, and then I was carrying him, and I could see the soles of his feet, and I ran, and then he played with me, and then he asked for this, and he asked for sweet. And while she was talking, she was crying and looking at Vivekananda. And he said, I'm asking you one simple thing. Do you think it is for real? She wants to see what Vivekananda says. She's frightened of him, understandably. She said, do you think it was for real? She thought he's going to tell her of you, old lady, babbling old lady, this is just imagination, and going to tell her. While she was recounting, this Vivekananda started to cry too. You know why? He's aware. This is no make-believe. This old lady is trying to get corroboration from this great super personality. And she's looking at him. She said, Mother, it is all true. It is all true, Mother. You see, he's caught up. This guy hangs on to rationality, but that is on the surface. Inner is full of emotion, full of tremendous devotion for God. He's hiding it under the guise of being an intellectual. They do this. In order for them to maintain a body and continue to interact with society, they will take on a guise of something they are not, just to hang on and to continue to interact with humanity. So this guise is broken very easily. When he sees this woman talk, he says, oh, you are lucky. You are lucky. It's all real. It's very real. So this is the story of Aghormani. And this lady, there are photographs of this lady, so there's no make-believe here. You take the story as you like. This is recorded in the Gospel of Ramakrishna about Aghormani and her experience of God as baby Krishna. Again, you see, one thing that Hinduism was struggling with is the idea that can you actually see God with form? Can God actually take on form, and can we actually experience God? And this idea, of course, unless you get these kind of personalities who are able to talk about their own personal experiences, and they are convincing enough, they are not going nuts, you don't think that they are serious. How do you know they are serious? The amount of purity it generates. If they were not serious, they would degenerate. But once they get their experience, the amount of purity they generate, their lifestyles are altered forever. That is the best proof that there was something dynamic and spiritual that they experienced. It was not make-believe. You can't live on make-believe. Something must touch you and transform you forever. And whenever anybody gets spiritual experience, you see, people like us will think and we wonder and we kind of feel this is interesting and kind of very quaint. But this is what life is about. Religion is to come alive. God has to be experienced. And the idea of God with form is not something that we throw in the river because somebody in the Semitic tribe has decided that God cannot have form. That is their business. That is their way. We have discovered this marvelous tool of experiencing God with form, name and form. He will come and play and interact with us. And that interaction is much more intense than our interaction with the rest of humanity. These are the proofs and become visible in the story of Ramakrishna. You see, as I said in one talk, he makes religions experiential. He emphasizes experiential dimension of religion. Just don't believe and sing and dance and that's it and you die. You must catch God here. And anybody who was serious and sincere and needed experience would be attracted to him, and his demand or his interest or his need will be fulfilled. This is very visible with anybody who came near him. They're sincere, their wishes were fulfilled. The other aspect of this Ramakrishna is this idea that religions must appear in the modern times in a mold suited to the needs of our time. He could never present a religion that was only suited to a particular movement in Bengal. By the way, I have to say a few things about Bengalis. I'm going to touch on it before I start even. Or Bengal, or India, or brown-skinned people of Southeast Asia. It can never be that limited. It's too narrow. If a modern proponent comes, he must come with a proposal that will suit the needs of the greater world, of the whole world. Otherwise, he has not done his job. It's a serious, straightway, you know his limitation then. He's meant for just a small group. Here is a personality meant for the whole world. So his message is very universal. It has to be universal. And for that to be visible, the mold in which religions are dished out must be changed. He broke the old mold. This man broke the mold. You see, because previous to him, every religion or every movement within religion would give a very limited prescription of how to become spiritual. And all these different prescriptions were never reconciled. They were lying scattered, and they become antagonistic towards each other because there are too many of them. And this is the thing. When you have the idea of monotheism, means God as a super personality, we all like that idea, oh Almighty Lord. But the thing is, there are so many different visions or versions of this monotheism, and as there are so many, they are going to create conflict, because monotheism creates fanaticism. Means I alone am right and my God is right. And this is a serious problem the modern world has to reconcile, to address. And the address comes from him. There are many pathways, and he has experienced them, so he knows from experience, not just book learning. So that is one of the unique features. He broke that mold. The two things that he brought into light, which I think are very exciting, is this. One day, while he was in meditation, he started using the word daya, daya. And then he started, no, not daya, not daya. And the word came, seva, seva. And Vivekananda was watching, and there was a great kind of tussle going on in his mind, of Ramakrishna's mind. And when he came out of meditation, he said, look, this old mold that we had said, show compassion to human beings. This is a standard way, daya, standard word in the Hindu tradition. And the way Hinduism was kind of propagating the idea of religion was saying, be compassionate to the rest of humanity, compassion to the animal. The word was compassion, show compassion. Daya was the central word used to put religion into practice. With Ramakrishna comes another word, and the word is seva, not daya. Who are you to show compassion? This is the language. Who are you to show compassion? Just consider yourself lucky that you are in a position to serve rest of humanity. Seva, you are fortunate. Count your lucky stars that you can serve humanity, serve God in the poor, in the weak. A huge transition is taking place in the way religions are going to be put into practice. From the word daya appears the word seva, serve. Now you see, this becomes visible in the story of Ramakrishna, and the person who picks it up immediately and runs with this idea is his main disciple, Vivekananda. He picked up the idea immediately. That is why, you see, with Vivekananda, the idea of serving God in man, seeing and serving God in man, seeing and serving God, Shiva in Jiva, become very visible. You see this India struggling, no dignity, humanity, kind of crushed. The only thing you visit, when you visit India, the only thing you see is humanity crushed underfoot. No dignity to men and women. No dignity, Sometimes I visited last time, and under a little boat, there was one man and one woman, husband and wife, sitting there, eating like animals. This is India. And I was saying, what are we doing to our people? What have we reduced them to what? So it was necessary to take up this challenge of not, tinkling bells and worshipping images and worshipping this God in the hereafter, but to see and serve the living God here and now. That is the Vedanta, that is the philosophy of Hinduism anyway. But it was not put in practice. And this proponent said, I'm going to change the mold. So when you see the word daya turning into the word seva, and that idea became very much infused in Swami Vivekananda, it became the driving force. He is not here to serve God, he is here to serve mankind. He says the special object of my worship in this life is to serve God in the most comprehensive manner. The sum total of mankind is a special object of my worship. This man is in love with humanity, human beings. This is the most clearest manifestation of the Spirit on earth. Where else will you search for him? This new mold that Vivekananda is very famous for came from Ramakrishna, from his meditations. The world dramatically changed. Now you see, this word now is very visible in all the movements, not only Hindu movements, even the Christian movements. It's becoming visible. They say, yes, we must serve humanity. But the thing is, the emphasis that was given came from Ramakrishna Vivekananda. Count your lucky stars. Don't even call it charity. Don't throw crumbs at the poor. You don't have a right. Think that you are fortunate that you are able to lift somebody up. So don't think that They are somebody lower than you that you are throwing crumbs at. Recognize that you are fortunate to meet that guy because you can do your play acting, do some service. So use it positively. Do not denigrate people who are struggling. It is automatic for you to serve them, serve God in man. See, this message, why is it so crucial? India talks of being spiritual, but it is nothing of the sort. There is no spirituality in India, modern India. Let this message go back. Let them get rattled. You see, they export gurus and swamis. They are more required in India. Rather keep them there. Because you see, this idea, this message, you see, as soon as you live in a society where it's a big difference between the haves and have-nots, and you do not address that, and you don't get shattered or you don't shudder at that, you are not alive, you are dead. Can't you see this in front of your eyes and you don't do anything about it? You are not alive. See, this is the power of this teaching, and yet they are struggling in India. Let me touch on something else, I think. I'm digressing a little bit, but I think I want to. One day, a very great devout bhakta came in front of Ramakrishna and started, singing this, kind of bhakti songs of God or goddess. And he had tears in his eyes, and he was with very kind of choking voice, he was singing, bhakti songs. His name is Kedar. And when he finished, he wiped his tears away, and he was about to go. He left. And typical of Ramakrishna, Vivekananda sitting next to him, said, "What do you make of him?" Checking each other out. So this guy is very sharp. I told you, very rude and very rough. He said, "I don't like this wallowing in sentimentality." Straight, blunt. He said, "I don't like this wallowing in sentimentality." They just wallow in sentimentality. But then Ramakrishna would probe him, but he had tears in his eyes. He said, "Look," because he has come from university. He said, "Look, if you focus on any particular point of light for a long time without blinking, your glands in your eyes will produce liquid that will pour out, trickle out. That is not, this is, you can just stare at anything and you'll get tears in your eyes. That means nothing." But then Ramakrishna, maybe he was thinking of God, Krishna. He said, "How do you know you're thinking about God?" Maybe he's thinking about he's missing his wife. Now, this is very rude. Why am I making a big thing about it? You see, this is one of the faults of modern Hindus. They wallow in sentimentality. They get highs and lows. It's so easy to get worked up and beat your drum and cymbals and dance and jump and get a high. But really, when you think about it, there is no depth to it. And the moment it finishes, they are back to their normal selves and gossiping and what happened. It doesn't have had any impact. So this wallowing in sentimentality, again, a unique feature of Hindus is something that this guy didn't like, and neither did Vivekananda. They disliked this wallowing in sentimentality. He said, "You Hindus," but he was very rough on the Bengalis. "You Bengalis, the only ras you developed," ras means particular attitude, is viraha, pining for your loved ones. And look, this is spread throughout India. If you look at all the kind of, there are so many other ras that you can develop. What are the other ras? Vira ras, spirit of adventure. He told the Hindus, "Where is your spirit of adventure?" Look at these English people. They jumped on the boat, went all over the world and conquered the world. You are wallowing in, "Oh, my loved ones has gone away." Look at every Hindi film, look at every soap opera. It is wallowing in sentimentality. My loved one is gone, and that's all they do, day and night. Vira. No other viras. Sense of adventure. Where is your sense of adventure? That is a ras too, non-existent. What about hasya ras? Humor, non-existent. If you look at any of the Hindi films, you see their humor, there's no this slapstick, it's real, there's no humor there. In fact, look, I'll be very blunt. There is, you see, in Bengal, I'm sorry, I'm really very rough on Bengalis today. When I looked at Rabindranath Tagore, and he said, "This is called a comedy." So because at a very young age, I read most of Rabindranath Tagore's literature. I said, "Comedy? I must read this." I looked at the comedy, the play he's written, comedy, and I couldn't, right from cover to cover, I couldn't find anything to smile about. Forget about laugh. I said, "This Rabindranath maybe, but he likes to wallow in sentimentality. There is no sense of humor there. Nothing. Only place where you find humor in India, there is, where? Krishna Bhai. Kathiawar. We know what humor means. You see, when two Bengalis are quarreling, it sounds as if they're having love, and they're in love with each other. The so is rounded language. It sounds as if they're kind of falling in love and kind of exchanging, ideas of love. When two Gujaratis are sharing love, it seems as if they're fighting. There's a big contrast between East and the West. Anyway, I'm digressing a lot. Let me get back to my story. So this idea of wallowing in sentimentality is something to stand against. And modern India has not improved one bit. The same old pining for your loved one, going on, Vira, they can only stick to that. The whole life, look, I'm telling you, flick on any of these TV channels, B4U, Sony, Z, whatever, and there's nothing but Viraras pouring out day and night. It demolishes the dignity, the integrity of the whole nation. It kind of drains you. This sentimentality. It needs to wake up and come on, be adventurous. Sense of humor, sense of adventure. Where is all that? Missing completely. So, again, I'm digressing, but let me come back. I'm not too heavy, don't want to be too heavy-handed. But you see, I don't know why I get annoyed with Bengalis or why I'm making these comments, and let it go back to India and Ramakrishna order even. You see, we are doing a lot of work in London here today. We are really working very hard to promote these marvelous teachings of these super giants. These are Bengalis. I would have thought the Bengali community in London would have really, taken me to their heart and given a lot of promotion to what I'm trying to do. So far, apart from Abhijit, the response is big zero. So, sorry about that. I'm digressing. I will edit this out. I think it's not fair. I've done enough damage without upsetting the Bengalis too. We'll edit that out. But anyway, I needed to say that. I'm a bit annoyed by that. Let me get back. You see, various disciples are coming close to Ramakrishna. And the next set are very interesting. The first one who comes is called, Ramakrishna calls him Suresh. This young man has got one very bad habit. Not one, two bad habits. He likes to womanize. He likes to go to the places of ill repute, and he likes to get drunk. He loves this. And he comes to visit Ramakrishna, and he said, before I need, if this man is a fraud, I'm going to take him to task. Because most of them are frauds. So he comes. And he's now challenging Ramakrishna. And as soon as he comes, Ramakrishna is talking, he says, there are two kinds of human beings. Those who rely on God and those who want to challenge God. This is how we start the story. When he knows what he's here for. You see, there are some humans who are like monkeys who like to grab onto things. So they like to grab God. And then there are some humans who are like kitten. They don't like to hang on to the mummy. They just go meow meow. And the mother comes and picks her up. So there are those who are kind of keep challenging God and so on. But they are like monkeys, and their grasp from time to time kind of becomes loosened and they fall down and die. And the kitten is safe. The mother is holding her. And this man was listening. This guy seems to be telling me something here. I'll come again. He gets hooked. But now, you see, people complain that this guy is a drunkard. And he's visiting the places of ill repute. How will you, change him? Ramakrishna said, come, let him come. They said, first of all, when we visit him, we won't tell him why we are here. If he starts the topic himself, conversation, then we know that he is serious. We won't tell him why we are here. So two friends visited him. As soon as they went, Ramakrishna said, Suresh, why are you worried about drinking? Nothing wrong with drinking. He's giving you permission to drink. This is good stuff here. He said, the only thing you do, Suresh, is drink in moderation and take your glass of wine and offer it to Kali. Offer it to Kali and then drink it as prasad. So this is fair enough. I don't mind. I can carry on my wine drinking, and this is not too bad here. I will carry on. So he goes home and starts practicing this. And look, this is the real story. Before he could drink as much as he likes and really become very kind of uninhabited and talk what he likes, talk nonsense, now he starts drinking. And once he takes a few sips, this is a real story. Once he takes a few sips, the doorways of his heart are opened up. And he sings the name of Mother Kali day and night. He's singing away, glorifying Mother Goddess. Bhakta, drunk Bhakta. But he sings the glory of Mother Goddess. He can't help himself. He didn't realize what he has let himself into. And he becomes a great devout of Kali Mother, Mother Kali. And he's singing nothing but this. And people report it to Ramakrishna. He says, yes, it's working now. Let him keep drinking. So what was an obstruction, he turned it around into become a very powerful tool to open up, remove his inhibitions and to relate to the idea of spirit. And he became unusual, devout devotee of Ramakrishna. In fact, he became one of the suppliers of the material that Ramakrishna needed in later life. See, when the disciples were struggling, whatever money he had, he put it on the table, saying, "Use this." He became a great devotee of Ramakrishna. So a person dramatically changed round, and this became a great devotee of Ramakrishna and a great helper of Ramakrishna in days to come. But the next personality I'm talking about is the master of kind of leading a very colorful life, if I can say so. And the name of this personality is Girish Chandra Ghosh. Now, Girish Chandra Ghosh was very famous as a playwright and a theatre producer in Calcutta in his time. Very famous, very rich, well-to-do. Again, he likes womanizing, he likes drinking, no difficulty. And this Girish Chandra Ghosh is running the Star Theatre in Calcutta, very famous theatre called Star Theatre in Calcutta. One day he hears that this Ramakrishna Dev from Calcutta, from Dakshineshwar, he has come to see the play Chaitanya Leela. He said, okay. The doorman said, should we charge him? He said, well, don't charge him, but everybody else with him, charge them. Let them come. But he said, don't you think you should come and say hello to him or invite him? He said, can't he get off the carriage by himself? Very rude. No problem. And he was watching from the window and sees Ramakrishna's face has become a little bit disappointed or kind of saddened. Doesn't matter. Comes, watches the play, goes away. And the interaction continues. And Girish is not very convinced by this personality, but continues to interact in a very robust manner with him, challenging him almost every time they meet. He keeps challenging him, threatening him, saying, even this can't be right. And Ramakrishna continues to be very soft, very kind, very gentle to him and continues to interact with him. Then one day he said, Girish, can you do me one favor? Something very great is inside you. It's trying to kind of pop out, show its colors. Do one favor to me. Just repeat the name of God twice a day. The rest will happen. At morning and at night, repeat the name of God once. That's all I'm asking. And Girish said, look, I've got such bad habits. Because this is how he would visit him. Do you know how he would visit him? He'd go to the house of ill repute. After he finished there, with his bottle of whiskey, he'd tell the driver in the horse and carriage, take me to Dakshineshwar. He'll appear in the middle of the night and, kind of reeling from being drunk, knock on the door of Ramakrishna and sit with him and say, now I'll come to talk to you. And Ramakrishna would get up and say, yes, let's talk. And then as soon as he came, he told the man, go in and get his bottle from the carriage, bring it here. This is the way he's interacting. This is the way he's talking. You think he's a sinner of the sin, the highest sinner. And yet he's talking like that with him all the time. So Girish, repeat the name of God twice. He said, look, you know my condition. I can't control anything. I can't be sure I'll repeat it day and night. I can't do it. I can't even promise you that I'll repeat the name of God twice in a day. I can't promise you that even. Sorry. The Guru is trying to negotiate some terms with the disciple, and the disciple says, no, that's not good enough. Then Ramakrishna said, okay, in that case, give me the power of attorney. I will repeat the name of God twice on your behalf. He can do this stuff like that. Give me your power of attorney. He said, that is easy. You got my power of attorney. From now, I don't need to worry. I can drink, get drunk, visit the house of ill repute, have fun. You repeat the name of God on my behalf. I'm free. Do it. He said, I give you power of attorney. See, there was a business transaction taking place without Girish realizing. He has given away everything. When you give a power of attorney to somebody, that means they can dictate everything. Next time when they met, and Girish said, I am going to do this. Ramakrishna, shush. You can never use the word I. Your power of attorney is with me. You have to say, if Ramakrishna wishes. You can never say I anymore, because that's what power of attorney means. I have got power of attorney on your whole life now. You can't never use the word I. You can't do anything. You say, if God wills. From now on, say, if God wills. Everything you say God wills. You don't have. He said, I didn't realize all that. My personality is gone. Pinch that. But let me just tell the story. Let me go fast. This Girish, who appeared to be the most worst sinner, became one of the closest disciples of household disciple of Ramakrishna. He cried tears again and again, say, how rude was I to this God-man who was coming to visit me. How rude could I have been? He would do everything to appease Ramakrishna from now on. And do you know what happens in later stage? At later stage, when Girish continues, he would tell his friends, his drinking disappeared because the power of attorney was gone, everything started to disappear. Drinking disappeared, womanizing disappeared, became a great devotee. And he would just meet these disciples, Ramakrishna, chat with them, interact with them. Do you know what he told once some of his disciples? He said, look, if I had known how graceful, how big is the grace of this Ramakrishna, I would have drunk more whiskey. Because he would have forgiven anything. He said, I have drunk enough number of, he used to boast. He said, I have drunk enough whiskey that if you put them end to end, it would reach the moon. He used to boast about it. He said, but if I had known what majestic, graceful person I'm in front of, who could forgive me any sin I would have committed, I would have committed even more. If I just found out a bit earlier. Look at the language, look at the mannerism. Tremendous devotion, real, and nothing but purest of devotion flowing in the rest of his life. You see, when he was about to die later, I'm just deliberately fast forwarding the story. When he was about to die, he was ill, and some of his disciples would visit him. And one day, he was sitting there, and some disciple walked in. He said, can you see that slipper? He said, yes. Bring that slipper and hit me on my head. And I see, you talk like that. So why should we, you're ill and you want me to pick up the slipper and hit you on the head as well? Come, he said, pick up the slipper and hit me on the head. I said, why? He said, tell you why. Just now I was thinking, what is going to happen to me when I die? What a stupid thing to think about. I'm sitting at the grace of this super personality. Why am I worried about what will happen to me at die? So I'm an idiot. Sorry, I need to be beaten up. Bring the slipper. It was that love, that closeness. You see, let me touch on one other thing. This Ramakrishna remained hidden from the rest of the world in the sense that nobody knew what personality was this Ramakrishna. He was almost, even the people very close, even these close disciples couldn't discern whether he's just a great bhakta, an avatar. Who is he? They were trying to suss him out and they couldn't. Even they were struggling. Even Vivekananda until last minute wasn't sure, who is this? What great person? Because, as I said, his ordinariness was very deceptive. So very few people recognize what his personality is all about. You see, one person who had no difficulty was this Girish Chandra Ghosh. Nobody else, no other disciple could recognize the majesty of this person except this, because of all this power of attorney nonsense. When Ramakrishna was suffering and he was about to pass away, just a few months before, on the 1st of January in 1886, he was suffering, very serious, very ill, in a garden house in Calcutta. And on that day, he had just enough strength to be able to walk and come out of his room. And he came out of his room and started walking on the pathway in the garden. And under the tree were sitting some of the Ramakrishna's monastic as well as householder disciples, and chatting and worried about Ramakrishna and talking about him. And Ramakrishna came near, putting a little shawl over his head. He came near, and as soon as he came, the disciples bowed down to him. And Ramakrishna jokingly told Girish, what are you telling people about me? What kind of things you are spreading about myself? And Girish, without any hesitation, fell down on his knees with folded hands. He said, you are asking me what I am saying about you? Let me tell you. Him who the Vedas cannot define, the Upanishads and the Vedas and the Gita cannot define or describe, you are asking me to describe that? They fail to describe you. How do you expect me to describe you or define you? When he said that, Ramakrishna, the shawl went off. For the first time in his life, and the only time in his life, he showed his true colors. He became different. Otherwise, always a humble, yes, devotee, yes, mother, like that. On that particular morning, on the 1st of January in 1886, called a Kalpataru day, Ramakrishna stood up, his shawl thrown away. He looked at the disciples. The whole atmosphere got charged up. completely, they all got lifted up. And they all started to feel, tears of joy flowing from their eyes and the hair standing on end. Real experience of spiritual. The whole lot of them lifted. He looked at them saying, what do you want from me? What do you want? This is called Kalpataru, the wish-fulfilling tree. Anything you want, you get it. He was in that mood. He said, what do you want? Every disciple started to sing and dance and circle around him, like a merry-go-round. And all came in front of him and asked for something. Some wanted to see the deity of their choice. Suppose I love Krishna. I want to see Krishna. He said, look. And he would see Krishna. Various disciples asked various things which will remain private. But one person called Upen Babu said, money. Whatever. In no time, he became a millionaire in Calcutta with a chirut, with cigar, wandering around. Upen Babu, the great publisher. Everything they asked, they got. And who set light to this whole phenomena? Girish Babu. Because he knew that he was dealing. You see, the others were struggling to make sense and try and classify this person. Is a bhakta, a great bhakta? Who is he? And this Girish Babu had no difficulty. He said, the Vedas fail to define you, classify you. Why are you asking me? And that was enough to spark, to open up the doorways. He said, what do you want, my boy? Anything. Kalpataru. And that particular day is very famous and is still celebrated as the Kalpataru day. And the person who ignited it is this very humble, if you like, this kind of wayward disciple of Ramakrishna called Girish Chandra Ghosh. In the final moment of his life, Girish Chandra lying in bed, looking very tired, about to give up his body, and somebody recorded this. Suddenly he lit up, he sat up, felt very excited. He said, look, he's a dramatist. His whole life was play acting, playing and writing plays. So a person with this stature requires a special, if you like, exit point. His cue. He suddenly sat up on his bed and said, Master, you come, let's go. And he just passed away. But this is when you store this, it'll make you feel, why, this stuff like that can happen? And his exit was also like dramatic, Oh, Master, you come, let's go. That's how he finished. You see, I'm touching on various personalities and the way they interacted with this super personality and how their lives were charged up and were divinified by just coming across this person. You see, just as this picture has very unique history, and I mentioned this story about the picture some time back, that Ramakrishna was not very keen to be photographed, and the only way you could photograph him is to talk about God, then go into meditation, and then you picture him. This is how the 3 pictures were taken of Ramakrishna when he was alive. All of them, somebody pushed him into meditation, and then they photographed him. One of the best ones is actually the one taken at Keshav Chandra Sen's house, the Brahmo leader. He walked in and he was in that very, very unusual mood, and his eyes are indrawn. You see, again, this meditation with open eyes, the feature of his personality. Open eyes, because for him, inside and outside are, by the way, the whole thing is Brahman. So he doesn't need to close his eyes to see Brahman. With open eyes, he sees that. That's why open-eyed. The other one with that, a feature, that's a unique feature, posture. And that picture is very dramatic, very powerful, especially his face. If you look at the face, it will make you feel that this is something special going on here, because his eyes are indrawn like that, and still tremendous bliss visible in the picture. Just as this picture is taken in a very unusual way, and this is the world famous picture now, the reason why people like me have come across the story of Ramakrishna is because there is one individual who took the trouble of recording all his conversations. Now, this has not happened in the history of mankind with previous God-man. Because the material you have is just you get fleeting glimpse of that personality, and the material regarding what they discussed, how they talked, who they talked with, the timing, the dates, it's all very fuzzy. It's never properly recorded. It was never properly recorded with almost all personalities. Suppose you want to look at Krishna's life story, you say, was the Bhagavad Gita really preached on the battlefield? It would take hours, and the armies would get fed up standing around. It can't be real. So you see, when you look at all these various conversations in the ancient scriptures, who said it, when they said it, which godman said it, are we sure about the accuracy? It's always suspect, and you must be aware that this is suspect. For the first time, again in the history of mankind, we find the tremendous information, very rigorous, very thorough information regarding a conversation with a godman, well recorded. So the personality I'm going to talk about is this personality who took the trouble of meticulously, whenever he visited Ramakrishna, he would take his diary with him and write down, scribble away. And sometimes some bits were missing. When he goes home, he will think about the whole conversation that took place while he was there and try and repeat in his own mind until he gets the right word. Then he would put it in. So I'm going to do the story of the author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, who was one of his household disciples. And you see how unique they are and how they interact with Ramakrishna. You'll find it will bring a smile to your faces. Now Mahendranath, it's called Master Mahashai. Mahendranath Gupta was a headmaster in schools in Calcutta. His speciality was literature. So he's you need an author who is master literature. This was his speciality. He was headmaster, a teacher of many subjects, including English literature, and a masterful writer. So this Mahendranath Gupta had a wife who was a little bit unbalanced. I mean, we're trying to be kind and gentle, saying she was a bit unbalanced. And he had great problem, a lot of family problem. The family was splitting up. He had to leave his father's house with his wife and baggage and find another place somewhere, and he was struggling. The world appeared very, very rough for him. And it was so bad, things were so bad in the house that he had decided to commit suicide. Now this is a perfect time to meet Ramakrishna. So he was planning suicide on that particular day, and he said, okay, and somebody said, oh, there's a nice garden house and there's a Paramhans who lives there. Let's visit him. So he said, yes, let's go. I'm going to die anyway, so let's get this thing out of the way. This is how he visited Ramakrishna for the first time. And then he walked in. Now you see, let me tell you, when you read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, if you are fortunate enough to read the Gospel of Ramakrishna, it will thrill you. He's a lovely author. His ability to use words correctly without being too, superfluous or without being too kind of articulate. Perfect pitch of language. Perfect pitch. His ability to describe was incredible. So here is this. You see, let me also say this. At the age of about 12 or 13, I came across Rabindranath Tagore literature, and I read almost everything. At the age of 13, I was reading away, memorizing the Gitanjali, memorizing it, because I loved the material. I read all his novels, his poems, his essays, and memorized the Gitanjali. I was using it in my GCSE English exams. I'm telling you, I was thrilled by Rabindranath Tagore. And then, a few years later, I came across the Gospel of Ramakrishna. If Rabindranath Tagore was given 1 Nobel Prize, this gentleman deserves 7 Nobel Prizes. That's the difference in the quality and the caliber. In fact, I find a lot of stuff that Rabindranath Tagore has written, which I suspect has come from here. I got enough problems. You see, that is the majesty of this writing. Incredible writer. Anyway, he meets Ramakrishna first time, and he's immediately, look at his way of, look, when he describes the meetings, he takes us, he lifts us up from here and transports us to that time, that day, in that particular location. The language is such that he'll transport you there, he'll take you there. He'll say things like that. The evening has come, the Vesper service in the temple is over, the cymbals and the bells were ringing, and the sound was carried on the banks of the river Ganga, and the evening sky was becoming dark, and the birds were, kind of chatter, and the flow of the Ganga was making a chattering sound. And I went into the room of the master. He calls Ramakrishna the master, and he calls himself M. Reduces his own, no ego, just M. He had no ego, this man. He said, M entered the room, and there was a little bit of incense stick burning there, and he could see the master smiling and sitting on the little wooden bench, and the devotee sitting on the mat on the floor. It was like Sukadev, dishing out nectar which the devotees were drinking. This is the language. You say, "Oui, I'm with them. I'm with you." You go with him. And then meticulously would actually write up all the conversations that were taking place between Narendra and Girish Chandra Ghosh, and they're all there. And they're talking with the master and talking amongst, writes everything or memorizes and goes home and writes it down rigorously. An unusual thing is every time look, let me do the story first before I get caught up with the story writing. Second time when he visited Ramakrishna, he said once he met him, his idea of committing suicide disappeared. He said, I met a God man here. This is something special. He draws me. This man draws me like a magnet. Must visit him again. Next time we visited him when there was nobody, no other devotees were there, and Ramakrishna was getting, a barber was shaving Ramakrishna, and he was standing. And he came to visit him, he paid his respect, and Ramakrishna asked him, where do you come from? Okay. Then he said, are you married? Naughty man, this uncle. And this man said, yes. And jumped up, he's married. He told the barber. And he says, if he committed a heinous crime, and motu pap kairo, he's married. He said, oh. And they continue shaving. And he said, have you got any children? And then this is Mahendranath's own writing. He said, my heart was, throbbing. He's asking me, do I have any children now? This marriage was heinous crime. He's asking me, have you children? That means, what more have you done? He said, my heart was beating very hard against my chest. He said, yes. He said, he's got children. He jumped up. He's got children too. As if another heinous crime has been committed. And he said, I was feeling very he said, what have I done? Why is he treating me like this? But you see, he was building up very close link with this Mahendranath. Love, tremendous. Now Mahendranath is caught, if you like, in the tremendous, this tremendous attraction he has for Ramakrishna. He's permanently caught. He comes every day, you see, the thing is this, look, this is the gospel of Ramakrishna. Okay? This book, this is meticulous record of all the conversation Ramakrishna had with all the devotees. And this only happened when Mahendranath visited Ramakrishna, which was only on the weekends. During the weekdays, even in the middle of the night, people used to, like Girish Chandra, knock in the middle of the night and visit him. None of that is recorded. So you literally got a very tip of the iceberg. And yet this is a very powerful thing, because here you see a real interaction of a God-man, meticulously recorded without any fault. I tell you, this is the great gift to mankind that Girish Chandra Ghosh has left. Sorry, not Girish Chandra, Mahendranath Gupta has left for mankind. A great gift for mankind. It will be valued in days to come. You don't know how powerful it is. When I gave this book, say, to Sita, my daughter, and she read through it, a lot of the stuff that we have in the books, primary and secondary Hinduism books, has come from those. The stories are recounted there. The idea of ice and water, they're all coming out from this gospel. So this book is being used now to promote this wider vision of Hinduism into the education system. Just a bit of digression, she's going to tell me off. We visited Mahendranath Gupta's house about 2 years ago in Calcutta. It's a kind of very tall structure with used to be a little classroom or school at the ground floor, and he lived in a single room near the terrace. We visited there. There we met the grandson of Mahendranath Gupta sitting there. And he talks just like Mahendranath Gupta. He's very majestic, very sweet, very methodical. He was speaking so well. And then Sita said, I've written these books. He said, do you know? You come to the right place. Because these books are dedicated to Ramakrishna and Shardamani. Can you do me a favor? Can you go downstairs into Mahendranath Gupta's house, in the room where he wrote the Gospel of Ramakrishna? There's a little desk. Go and offer it there. And this little girl, poor girl, went there with those 2 books, shivering, came back with tears in her eyes. She said, oh, this is my ideal, this ability to write systematically the experiences of a God-man. So they become captured in this book, and this is the powerful book. I tell you one thing, if you want to present somebody with spirituality encapsulated in this manner, this book is a very powerful tool. It will respond to every question that may arise in your mind. It will respond. The book will respond. Anyway, I'm talking about Mahendranath Gupta, who lived a life very close to Ramakrishna, interacted with all his disciples. In the final days of his life, he lived in that little room upstairs. And there, lots of people would crowd round. and ask him question about Ramakrishna. A lot of genuine devotees, all his life he stayed like that. And when they used to visit him, he would say, look, I sit on the bank of a huge ocean and I have very little to offer myself. I just have a little pitcher, very small pitcher, with which I fill from this infinite ocean and dish it out to the devotees who come here. Such humility. He had no ego. And all his life he lived this kind of very gentle life. And do you know this book, at a very mature age, when he was struggling with his eyesight, he was still proofreading the book. And the book was not written, not printed in his lifetime. He finished the last proofreading of the last chapter and passed away before the book was published. You see, his whole life was dedicated to this grand personality that he came across. And he knew, the thing is this. There's a very nice story that Ramakrishna did. He said, a salt doll went to measure the depth of the ocean. A doll made of salt went to measure how deep is the ocean. The moment it starts entering the ocean, it begins to melt and disappear. This is the story of Mahendra Nath. The moment he comes near, he loses his own individuality. It merges in the, if you like, in this kind of grand ocean of spirituality. And this is very visible in the way he presents the story of Ramakrishna in this book. You see, this picture of this old man has been going on a tour, yatra, at various devotees' house, treated very unceremoniously. I've noticed just kept on the floor. He doesn't mind, leave him there, it's all right. But you see, every time I start my talk, I try and offer you a kind of a different slant on this personality. I give you a different angle on this personality. And today the focus is going to be on Ramakrishna, the bestower of grace. You see, we all like to think of God, but you see, God is so distant and we are here and we are struggling to make sense of life. And life is harsh. We all know it's very harsh. I mean, even up here, with the recent marriage, things are, they're always harsh, So life is harsh. And yet, we seem to kind of relate or try to relate to the idea of spirituality and God. I mean, try and link up with this God. And we need all the help we can get. So whenever we come across a personality who is the bestower of grace, who gives it away, you can't do better. And this is what Ramakrishna is about. He's the bestower of grace. Before I talk about it, let me just do a story that he used to narrate himself. An interesting story. There are 4 friends who go for a walk in the forest. As they go, they find a wall, they come across a wall. And from behind the wall, they hear very nice divine music playing from behind the wall. And of course, they're very curious, very divine, exciting music. What is going on behind the wall? They must find out. They go right around the wall, but it's circular. They can't get behind it. And still the music is coming from behind the wall and they want to get to it and they are struggling. So they decide to use a technique. They say, okay, let's help each other so we can climb the wall and see what is going on behind. So 2 friends, raise the third one and say, okay, we are sending you up. Tell us what's going on behind. They lifted him up and the third friend climbed up, sat on the wall, looked behind and went, ah, and then disappeared behind the wall. Now the 3 friends left behind said, this is not a very useful thing, not a very helpful thing. He just went, ah, and disappeared. Didn't tell us what's going on. Not a very useful fellow. They said, okay, we send you the second one. We send the second one up now. This time, don't disappear by going, ah. The second friend is now lifted up and he also climbs up onto the wall and he looks behind and he goes into ecstasy. He's in an excited mood. He does a bit of a singing and dancing show on top of the wall. He dances on the top of the wall, walks about dancing and singing and excited. And in no time he too disappears. Oh dear, said the other 2 friends, we don't know what's going on behind the wall. We lost 2 friends. Let's do one more. Let's give it one more go. So the third friend gives the hand to the 4th friend to climb up the wall, gives him a hand so the 4th friend can just climb up the wall, sit on top of the wall. He looks behind the wall and goes, ah, he wants to sing and dance too, but he holds himself in check. He sits quietly there. He puts one leg on this side of the wall and the other leg on the other side of the wall and he straddles the wall firmly so he doesn't disappear again like the other ones. He told the fourth friend, do you know what is here? This thing that we are searching for so many lives, this thing called spirituality, this thing called God, is what is on this side. But don't worry, I'm not going to be taken in so easily. I'm going to just disappear to this, because it's so exciting, it's so sweet, it's so attractive. You are tempted to disappear and merge in God. So don't worry, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to straddle the wall very firmly between my legs, won't let it, I'll sit firmly on the wall and give my arm to you and lift you up, my friend, so you too can see or experience this thing called God. Now this story is very telling, because it tells us these are the different kind of personalities we come across in the Hindu tradition. There are many rishis, many sages, many saints, many seers who experience God. The experience is so attractive. Look, this is far more attractive than everything you put together in your life. Multiplied by a million. It's much more sweeter than that. It's such a sweet experience, such an attractive experience. You just merge. You don't have time for any, sending any notes to your parents. You just disappear. This is God experience. And many sages, thousands, would emerge in God without making any fuss, without letting anybody know. They would just merge in the Lord. These are the rishis of the ancient and modern India. Called this, this is called the Shanta Bhav. They just merge in God without kicking up a fuss. The second kind of people we come across are the ones who do a bit of a jig on top of the wall, a bit of dance and music. These are the bhaktas, the devotees, who are so excited by this experience of God. They can't help themselves but do a bit of a dance and song and dance. They can't help themselves. You see, look, this is again the most sweet experience. And before they merge in the Lord, merge in God, they want to make a little bit of an exhibition to the rest of humanity that there is something exciting behind this wall that we're all searching for. These are the great bhaktas, the Miras, the Tulsidas, the Tukarams of this world. They sing and dance in the name of God, and we say, wow, what marvelous thing. What have they touched? What have they touched? And they merge in God. But the third friend is the unique chap. He is very excited by God. He wants to merge in God. He also wants to do a bit of singing and dancing, but he says, I'm not going to lose my balance. I'm here for a greater purpose. It is not only enough for me to experience God, it is necessary and it's very important for me to give this experience to the rest of mankind. I will straddle the wall. It is a harsh experience to straddle the wall. I will straddle the wall and put my hand out and lift lots of other people, so that this experience that I find so exciting is not just meant for me, it is meant for the greater humanity. And they sit on the wall and pick up lots of people and pull them up. These are very special. This is the Ramakrishna. He was telling his own story without realizing it. These are the people who can experience God. Look, you see, whenever, again I'm repeating this because I think it's very important to emphasize this aspect of Hindu religion. It is marvelous to find personalities who can relate to God, who can argue about God, who can debate about God, who can articulate about God. Marvelous chaps. Have they experienced God for themselves? Ask yourself. You test them out. Have they really experienced? This is an experiential enterprise. It is not an intellectual enterprise, neither is it an emotive enterprise. It's an experiential enterprise. This is what we are searching for. Serious first-time God experience. Are they experienced? First question. If they are, you are on the right path. Second question. Can they give this experience to us? Can they pass on this marvelous thing, not just keep it to themselves, but do they have the power to transmit it to us? When you meet such personalities, don't let them off. Hang on to them. These are very special. And this is the caliber of this Ramakrishna. Lots of people came, left, right and center, in the middle of the night, throughout the day, throughout his life. You see, here we find a personality who doesn't experience God once in a while. Continually, 7 days a week, it's 24 hours a day, he's intoxicated with God experience. Can you imagine that personality? At the drop of a hat, while he's talking, if anybody mentions the word Ishwar, God, Bhagavan, anything, off he goes. And he lights up, and you see this is not make-believe. He is actually immediately able to leave this world, this plane, and enter the godly plane. Immediately become infused with spiritual experience, instantaneously, continually. You have to hold him down. In fact, he had to struggle to keep the body going. He had great difficulty. And sometimes, when people, they had difficulty to interact with this person because he would fly off. But the thing is, he didn't fly off on his own. He took lots of people with him. And this is what we're going to discuss today. How many people received this grace and so easily? Look, if you go to a guru, they'll say, look, first of all, join my ashram, and for 20 years recite this thing that I'm telling you, sit on the bank of the Ganga and recite this day and night, memorize this, and I'll test you. They'll give you all these exercises to do, and by the time you finish, all your hair have fallen out and you are struggling. Here is this unusual personality. Do you know what he does? He calls you, he gives you the God experience first, then said, we'll do the practices afterwards. Can you find a marvelous teacher like that? He gives you first and he gives you God experience number one. Almost every youngster who came to him at this particular juncture, all of them were given God experience literally on the first or second visit. Boom! Narendra, Rakhal. Remember I told you the stories of Vivekananda. The second time went, Ramakrishna went and touched him, and boom, off this fellow goes. He said, stop it. He was not ready even. This is the power of this. He wants to give it away. This is why he's a bestower of grace. He wants to give it away. Every youngster who came, tell you how we did it. It's such a marvelous story. In our day and life, in this age, can this happen? Can this be true? Lots of these youngsters came. Sometimes, you know what he'll say? He'll say, just at the second or third visit, they've had it. First visit, they'll just give, nice boy, yes, come here, come again. That's all. Second time, they are in trouble. When they visit, he will go near them and boom, pass it on straight away. Sometimes, he would say, okay, go and sit in the Panchavati and I'll come and see you. And the little boy, some of them were only 14-year-old, 14 to 20 age group, roughly. And they would visit this boy, this man. Only a handful youngsters, that's all. They would visit, go and sit in the Panchavati. They would sitting, Ramakrishna would go near, and just at a mere glance, see the power, at a mere glance. There is no book learning, there is no Shastra Adhyan, there is nothing. By mere glance, the fellow begins to shudder, and in no time closes his eyes and goes into the deepest meditation. He doesn't know what's hit him. Given first an experience, instantaneously. Some he would touch, some with a glance, some he would say, can you stick your tongue out? I'm telling you a real story, weird as you might find it. The person will say, of course, you don't stick your tongues out to your guru generally, but he will ask you to stick your tongue out. And then he'll come mumbling something, and we don't know what he does. He somehow kind of scribbles something on your tongue. And the moment that happens, you are gone. Is he gone where? To our home, our real home, our spiritual home. He sends us off. We discover our real identity instantaneously. With one disciple, this was a very unusual way of passing on spiritual experience. His name is Hari Prasanna. Now, Hari Prasanna was kind of well built, a little bit like our Harshad Bhai, well built. And all these disciples came, and Hari Prasanna, this was perhaps his second visit, he sat in the corner. They're all nervous of this man. He was sitting in the corner listening. Slowly, one by one, the devotees bowed down and slowly went away. And then Ramakrishna came near him, because Hari Prasanna had a habit of, he liked to wrestle. Wrestling. I told you he was well built. So Ramakrishna, you like to wrestle? He said, yes. Let us wrestle, said Ramakrishna. Hari Prasanna thought, this is unusual guru, he wants me to wrestle with him. So he, in gentle hand, he put his two hands out and stood up. And Ramakrishna came, took hold of both his hands, and they started to wrestle in this kind of, like this manner. And this Hari Prasanna is very strong, and Ramakrishna is a very, very gentle person. So in no time he pushed him to the end of the wall and he pinned him to the wall. And this frail Ramakrishna is pinned to the wall, and Hari Prasanna looking at his guru, what a weird fellow. He wants me to wrestle. While this is happening, these are the words of Hari Prasanna. Just think. He said, while I was holding him, I suddenly felt tremendous power coming out of his body, through his hands, entering my system. Waves and waves of spiritual experience engulfed me. I was in tears, tears of joy flowing, and I was shuddering. I said, what is this? What is this? You see, when you get spiritual experience, this is the first thing you find. You say, what is this? What is this? It is so powerful, so overwhelming. So here is this wrestler who is pinning the master on the wall, and going, what is this? What is this? He's shuddering. And then Ramakrishna lets go of his hand and says, you won. Look at the language. He's given the highest experience and say, you win. In wrestling, you are the winner. And he went away. Unusual way of passing on spirituality. Sometimes a disciple will come, somebody called Sharad came. Now he's a very, very important personality. Sharad came and Ramakrishna said, what kind of God do you wish to see? You see, he would ask them blunt questions straight away. You see, there is no time to waste. Which way do you wish to experience God? He asked Sharad. Sharad said, do you know which one? I don't like to see the deities, gods and goddesses. I couldn't be bothered. Do you know which God I wish to see? I wish to see God in every human being. And Ramakrishna smiled. He said, this is the most highest experience, my boy. It'll take some time, but you will get it. And this Sharad later on becomes Swami Sharadanand. The book he wrote on Ramakrishna, he says in the introduction, he gives himself away. He said, everything I've written in the book is something that I've experienced for myself. And he's talking of Ramakrishna's highest spiritual experience. And this young boy is saying, I had it. So what this master promised came to fruition. Let me also tell you, it's not that easy. You see, when these youngsters came to Ramakrishna, they had struggle. Sometimes they had big struggle. Let me just show you, give you an example. With this Sharad, when he started visiting Ramakrishna, the parents got worried. They said, this is not right. Let us do a havan to stop the influence of this Ramakrishna on this boy. You know, the standard stuff. Haven't you noticed if we have difficulty in our family, any problem, we want to do a havan, sort things out. So they did a havan and nothing happened. The boy went even more faster to Ramakrishna. Then Sharad's father found a great Shastri, a Pandit. He said, I know how to get rid of this Ramakrishna, sort him out. I'll take this great Shastri, studied, maybe Banaras University, all that, Banaras and all that, studied so well, versed in the scriptures. I will take him with me to visit Ramakrishna and we'll defeat him. And we'll soon in front of my son. So he'll see, this is fluff. And we'll walk away. So he took this great Pandit with him to defeat Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna started talking and the Pandit started listening. And with folded hands, the Pandit said, you are right, sir. And left. And this is how, you see, they had struggle. But some boys had unusual mothers. One boy, I remember I mentioned the name Rakhal. He was married already. He had a very unusual mother-in-law who happily dished out his son-in-law to Ramakrishna and said, take him. We wish we had mother-in-laws like that. And there was one mother. I know, Kaka, difficult to find mother-in-law like that. There was one mother, the name of the son is Baburam. The mother said, I want to give my son to you. If he joins you, I'll be blessed. So he had this unusual combination. In one case, the mother cried her heart out, saying, look, I'm getting old, you better get married, who is going to do the cooking? And the boy got married, and then he started visiting Ramakrishna, and he said, look, if you wanted to visit Ramakrishna, why did you get married? And the boy said, no, I can't win here with this mother. So they had all sorts of unusual conflict in the family, unusual developments. But there was one interesting incident I think we should mention is this. There was one particular disciple, a young boy, I think I should make a big thing about him. His name was Subodh. Now this Subodh was a very guileless person, not very learned, could not speak English even, very simple boy, became very closely attached to Ramakrishna and completely guileless. So whatever Ramakrishna said, he would swallow it and accept it without any difficulty, without any complication. But the story about the funny part I want to say is because there was a lot of fun and games too. This Subodh later on became Swami Subodhanand and he was called Khokha Maharaj. Khokha means a young boy. Now this Khokha Maharaj struggled, and then when Vivekananda became famous and all the American ladies started to visit, Khokha Maharaj was put in charge of giving them a guided tour. So, he doesn't know English, and these American ladies are coming and he's giving them guidance. This is Ganga, this is Dakshineshwar, and he's doing this, conducted tour. And then Vivekananda told him, look, at the end of the tour, these ladies will tell you, thank you. And there is one English word that your English response you must give. This is good, otherwise it's rude. Khokha Maharaj said, yes, what should I reply? When they say thank you, you say, I don't care. And this used to happen regularly, and all the ladies would get surprised. Why is he talking like this? Thank you, I don't care. And they went away surprised. Khokha Maharaj was surprised. Why are these ladies misbehaving like this? I just told exactly what Vivekananda said. I don't care. So this kind of, you see, look, why should I bring this in? Even though there was tremendous pressure, tremendous hard strife in the spiritual progress, there was tremendous humor. Remember this. Spirituality without humor becomes morbid, and it is downright denigrating. Spirit is full of life, full of humor. Without humor, you lost the plot. And throughout the life of Ramakrishna, there was tremendous humor, no end of humor. And this idea of just dishing out grace came with a lot of obstacles, but with a lot of humor too. One day Ramakrishna sat on top of Sharad's lap and started bouncing up and down. Now he's a big man and this Sharad is a little boy and he's dumping at that. And they said, why? He said, I know why. This guy is steadfast, steady, and he can bear the burden. Do you know why he said that? As this thing moved on, he became the first Secretary General of the Ramakrishna Order. For 30 years, he held on the order, one boy. Because all the others were kind of getting lost in meditation, and this chap was looking after the whole setup. So this Ramakrishna was testing out. So he used to test out his disciples as we went along. Of course, during the process, we also come across some worldly wise people who would like to teach Ramakrishna a thing or two. They are very worldly wise. The very famous literary figure called Bankim Chandra visited Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna is a great novelist, very famous. And Ramakrishna started discussing. Again, let me say this important before I go on to Bankim Chandra. You see, Ramakrishna, look at this godman of our time. Never invited people to come and visit him saying, look, I'm a great person, come and visit me and sit at my feet. He would go out of his way to visit anybody he thought was spiritually enlightened. He went out of his way to see, say, Keshav Chandra Sen, the head of Brahmo Samaj. He went out of his way to see Dayanand Saraswati, the head of Arya Samaj. In his time, they all were there, and he went out to look for them. And he had never a sour word for any of them. He wanted to build them up from where they were. He never said a single sour thing about any movement of the Hindus. Never. He wanted to interact and lift them up. But then they would sometimes come, like Bankim Chandra, and wanted to discuss and debate with him. And then he said, Ramakrishna, what is the aim of life, do you think? He said, eat, drink, and procreate. Very rude thing to tell a holy man. He said, I understand. This is how you lead your life, and this is the only thing that comes out of your mouth. It's understandable. If you eat radish, then you burp radish. This is understandable. And then you see Ramakrishna expounded this marvelous idea of how a religion can be practiced by the householder. Again, this is a marvelous thing for people of our standing, because for us monastic life is almost impossible. How can we invoke spirituality if we are leading a householder's life? Very simple technique, says Ramakrishna. He says, once in a while go into solitude and take stock of your life. We don't do that. Such a simple prescription. Once in a while, don't even take your whole family with you. Go by yourself into solitude. Spend some time by yourself and take stock of your life. And you'll find it wanting. It'll stir you up. It'll wake you up. Do that. Second thing he said is this. This is again an important, very important teaching of Ramakrishna, which appears so simplistic. Look, this guy is so simple. It's very difficult to discern the depth of his personality. Look at him, he's so simple. The second simple prescription he gives is this. He says, be very careful regarding the company you keep. And we think, no, we are careful. We are not. We get caught up. And in no time we get caught up with small talk, with meeting people that we have very little in common with, but it is part of this kind of living in society. So we get caught up. And this disease is a killer. We may think, no, we are immune. We are not immune. If we mix with company which is kind of going to drag us down and make us worldly, we are not immune. We need to be very careful about the company we keep. Other thing he said is this, again, look, here is this kind of reconciliation between this kind of very ideas of great renunciation and still leading a worldly life. He said, look, after marriage, after the birth of one or two children, the way you look at your partner should be that you are looking at a spiritual companion. This is not an object for your desires. This is a person, an individual who can help you progress spiritually. When you give that dignity to your partner, then you will both progress. As long as you keep viewing your partner as an object of desire, you have lost it. You will not succeed in spiritual life. So you can still be living in a married life and yet start to view your partner not as an object but as an individual. Give them that dignity. The moment you give them that dignity, they'll rise up to the challenge and you will succeed spiritually. This is the marvelous thing, such a simple prescription for modern times. In modern world we suffer. Wrong company, wrong attitude towards our family, the wrong attitude towards our partner. This needs to be changed. Again he said, lead a life in a focused manner and have tremendous faith in God. And there's a nice story. Let me do a story here. There's a nice story that he used. He said, have enough faith in God to think that underpinning everything, good and bad thing that happened to you, behind everything is nothing but God. Have that very simple attitude to life and see how it will transform you. He did a lovely story about Raghu Ram. Now Raghu Ram was a weaver. And he was a very honest, guileless, simple person. And he used to weave every day, produce cloth and go to the market and sell it. And when he set up his stall and people would ask, customers will come and say, how much is the piece of cloth? He say, look, by the grace of Ram, everything started by the grace of Ram. The raw material cost 1 rupee. By the grace of Ram, the labor cost is 50 paisa. By the grace of Ram, the total cost is 1.5 rupees. Buy it. And people say, what a simple fellow, what an honest fellow. And he did well in his trade. Things were going very well. He was well known in the whole town as an honest, sincere, straightforward person, living everything with the grace of Ram, by the will of Ram. Now one day this Raghu Ram, you see, Ramakrishna knew that narration is very powerful way of putting across very subtle ideas. So this is the story of Raghu Ram, he has said. So I'm using it. He said one day this Raghu Ram was sitting on the veranda after he's doing his day's work, resting. And then it was getting night time and suddenly he saw there were 3 robbers who had just robbed one rich man's house and collected so many utensils to carry away that they were struggling to lift it. These 3 robbers passed by, they looked at Raghu Ram, he was well built. They said, good chap, let's use him. Come here. And Raghu Ram went. He said, now lift it on your, put everything on your head. And Raghu Ram put a big bundle on his head. He said, now follow us. So Raghu Ram followed. And while they were going, they came across 3 policemen. So the robbers ran away and Raghu Ram was standing in the middle of the road with a big bundle on his head. The police came. They said, we have caught this fellow red-handed. He's robbed the big house and look at the stuff on his head. We have caught him red-handed. Let's take him to prison. They immediately locked him up. And Raghu Ram sat in the prison happily. Next morning he was taken to the magistrate. And the whole town had heard that Raghu Ram has been caught stealing and is being tried, in court. So the whole town, immediately went to the magistrate court to hear the story. How did this Raghu Ram become a robber? This is ridiculous. So the whole town visited. And the magistrate was also aware because he must have bought the piece of cloth for 1 pound, 1 rupee and 50. He knew about Raghu Ram too. So he was also amazed. He said, what is going on here? So he was curious too. So they put Raghu Ram on the box and said, now tell us exactly what happened before you pass sentence. So Raghu Ram said, by the grace of Ram, I was sitting on the veranda. By the grace of Ram, 3 robbers came by. By the grace of Ram, they were carrying a bundle on their heads. And they invited me to pick it up. And by the grace of Ram, I lifted it. By the grace of Ram, we were walking along and we saw some policemen. And by the grace of Ram, the robbers ran away. And the policemen, caught me. And by the grace of Ram, I was prisoned last night. And by the grace of Ram, I am put in front of you. And by the grace of Ram, you can now punish me. So the magistrate took his glasses off, started to cry. He said, I've never met such a guileless person. He said, I tell you, you are released. And straight away Raghuram said, by the grace of Ram, I've been released. You see, a simple attitude. You may think, what a naive story. But we don't know how to live in this simple manner. This is not a story of a simpleton. It is the story of a highly evolved personality who sees that underpinning this universe, everything happens by the will of the same personality. And when you are able to flow with things, good and bad, when you are able to flow with reality as it is, you are leading a spiritual life. You don't need to go in university and get degrees about spirituality. They flow. There's another story that well recounted. Once says, Narad to Krishna, I am your best devotee. I love you so much. I am your best bhakta. And Krishna said, not really. There's another fellow who is doing a better job than you. So Narada said, how can anybody love you more than I do, Krishna? Krishna said, come with me, I'll just show you. And then they took him to a place where there was a farmer working very hard, sweating all day, plowing his field, reaping the harvest, working hard. At home he would go at night, play with his children and take his bath, have his meal, and then just before going to bed, he would repeat the name of Krishna 3 times and go to sleep and start snoring. Narada said, that's your best devotee? This is rubbish compared to me. Krishna said, okay, we'll test you out. Here, this is the way you test. We give you a bowl which is filled to the brim with oil. Here is a little bowl, filled to the brim with oil. Your duty, Narad, is to go around this village without spilling a drop of oil. Do it now. And Narad says, this is a tough test, but doesn't matter, I'm going to win. So Narad held the bowl very carefully, and the road was very rocky, and still he managed to make sure that he goes around the village without spilling a single drop. He finished his round and came back to Krishna and said, I have finished. Not a single drop fell down. Said Krishna, my second question to you is, when you did the round, how many times did you repeat my name? He said, you told me to focus on the bowl. How can I did. See, this is the story of this farmer. He is day and night devoted to his duty, fulfilling his duty to the letter. And yet he finds time to repeat my name 3 times a day. You couldn't do it 3 times a day. You couldn't do it. He is a greater devotee. What is the idea behind this? And why did Ramakrishna use this story? You see, it is telling us this. Do not feel frustrated if you have to lead a householder's life. Provided you have that tremendous faith and this tremendous love for God, you fulfill your duty to the letter. Make sure you fulfill it fully. Do not do a half-hearted job. At the same time, this kind of strong, anchor that you have on God is not lost. You see, with Narad, the anchor disappeared. With one duty, disappeared. With a householder, he got hundreds of duties. And even fulfilling these hundreds of duties, you can still maintain your anchor. This God, you won. You win. And Ramakrishna used 2 words that were sometimes misunderstood. He said, Kamini Kanchan are the 2 greatest distractions in modern times. Look, here is a modern proponent of religion who is going to tell us, the modern world, what are our serious drawbacks or what we should watch out for. And he kept using the word Kamini Kanchan. Now, Kamini means normally woman and Kanchan means gold. So you might think he's saying no woman, no gold. He's highly biased, surely. He means lust and greed. Lust and greed are the biggest killers. If we all are very honest with ourselves and we start analyzing our own lives, how we lead our lives, you will see that these 2 occupy all our activities. These 2 control us, they dictate to us, and we have great difficulty in getting out of it. And it's only that he warned men to be careful about women. He would warn women too. When women came to see him, he would say, look daughters, be very careful that this idea of lust does not arise in your mind. So just as you would warn man to make sure that lust is kept under harness, and after marriage, after birth of 1 or 2 children, make sure you put it on the back burner, and now rise above this animal instinct. He would say the same to the women. So it is not an issue of women, it is an issue of lust. This idea of gold, let me just show you to what extent this person practices the idea of non-attachment to money. Remember I said when he was practicing his disciplines, he would take 1 rupee and some clay and pour it in the Ganga and saying, "Rupee, Ganga, I can't see any difference." You may think it's silly to throw away money, but he was really disciplining himself to can't see the distinction between these two, and he could not. Also, he could not distinguish between men and women. This is a big thing. You may think, oh, is it that big? Just let me tell you. If for an instant, even for a short time in our lives, we are able to rise above this idea of gender issue, we are able to rise above it. Do you know how dramatic it is? At the moment, if you see a beautiful person pass by, a male or a female, our eyes stick. They follow her. Even though we are trying to control ourselves, our eyes stick and they follow. And we think it's ticklish. It's not ticklish, it is slavery. Slavery. We are being dragged. When you are able to lift yourself away even for a short moment, where you can see women no longer as an object, but as an individual, the moment you're able to lift yourself up, the sigh of relief you will have, you will see the world in a different light. Thank God you don't get somebody, it's like putting a ring around your nose and being dragged around. That is stopped for forever. You can lift yourself above that. Very few people succeed, but if you succeed, it gives you such relief, such tremendous, you say, thank God, because half your burden is gone. Because half the time, either we are male or female, we are dragged, we are stuck. Our eyes catch attention, they get stuck and they follow. And we become slaves. We are not the masters, we are slaves, and we still think it's ticklish. In the story of Ramakrishna, you see, wherever he saw women, any women, even remember the story I did about he was taken to the house of ill repute to try and make him normal? He sees women and he says, mother, you are here. Just imagine we have, for example, even a short time in our life where we see every woman as the blissful divine mother. Just imagine how it will lift us up. You see, instead of being dragged down, we are lifted up. So women no longer is something to fear. It is something to revere, to feel comfortable with. There's one story about one youngster who used to come to Ramakrishna. Since his young days, he hated women, he hated girls. He would keep, shush girls away. If the girls came near him, he would shush them away, little boy. When he came to Ramakrishna, he said, I hate women. Ramakrishna, my boy, you are caught in their clutches. By hating them, you are caught in their clutches. Don't you see? You have to go beyond this idea of that they are women and see them as the blissful image of the Divine Mother. And then you are safe, my boy. That's the only way you escape. Otherwise you get caught in the clutches. This boy later on became like that. There was one other young boy in the time of Ramakrishna. Now this boy Tarak was married. Do you know how he was married? Again, just show you the dynamics of marriage in this time. Tarak was married because he wanted to get his sister married, and the only way his sister could be married was if they can give some dowry, and they didn't have money. So do you know what they did? They did exchange. So this Tarak married the girl, and her brother married Tarak's sister. So they did exchange, so that there's no dowry either way. That's how he got caught into marriage, just doing this equation, solving the equation, equating, balancing the books. He got caught. But this Tarak was he was strongly under the influence of Ramakrishna. He used to sleep in the same bed. Look, I'm telling this up. Let this thing go in the world. Sleep in the same bed with his wife and absolute celibacy. And when Vivekananda heard about it, he said, Tarak, you lived like this for 1 or 2 years? He said, yes. He said, from now on, we won't call you Tarak. His name was Swami Shivanand. We'll call you Mahapurush. You are the real Purush. You see, the person who can withstand, when the women look at you and glance at you and, flicker their eyelids, and if you can withstand then, you are a Mahapurush. You are the great hero. You are that Tarak. So I'm just showing you this dynamics of this idea of lust, and so crucial that it must be addressed in modern life. Look at India today. it is wallowing in lust, it is wallowing, it's sinking, it's losing its dignity, it's losing all its kind of luster. Because lust will drain the kind of spirit of a whole nation, it will destroy it. So here we see Ramakrishna rising above it and telling modern man, be careful, keep it under harness, otherwise it will destroy your dignity. This issue of money, since he decided that he is not going to touch money, let me tell you how serious this is. A Marwadi called Lakshmi Narayan arrived on the scene, and he saw Ramakrishna's bed, and the bed sheet was covered in dust. It has not been washed. And he felt sad. He said, this is a God man here. Even his bed sheet is not properly cleaned. They don't have any money here. I know what I do. This is Marwadi, standard response, money. He said, I'm going to offer 10,000 rupees. We put it on interest, and on that interest, this place will be well looked after. Nobody has to bother. So he offered. And Ramakrishna said, look, I don't touch money. But then this old man is a bit naughty. He said, maybe you can ask my wife, Shardamani. She lives in a little room outside. And this Marwadi went and told Shardamani, to look after this gentleman, we need to offer this money. And he's saying, no, I should come and see you, so I would like to put it in your name. And this Shardamani was up to and knew the mischief. He said, look, if you give the money, who is it being used for? This man, the same. Can't have it. She was up to the mark. She responded in the right magnanimous. I think Ramakrishna was just messing her up, testing her like that. She rose above it and said, no, I can't touch it. The money was not given. Throughout this life, look, let me just tell you about Shardamani a little bit. When later on in her life, she had to go back because there was no money. And she had to go back to her village after Ramakrishna passed away. And for many years, do you know how she lived? Here is the mother, if you like, the mother of this super personality. She lived, nobody knows. There was no money, she never asked for anything. The algae, the green algae that would grow on the ponds. She would take the algae and make curry out of that and have it with rice. No money. What money? The amount of detachment, the amount of renunciation in the lives of Ramakrishna and Shardamani is something that we look at and say, how can this be possible in our day and age? How can this be possible? There are people clamoring to give them money and they wouldn't touch it. They lived with dignity and in this unique manner. Let me touch a little bit, let me go a little bit, digress a little bit. You see, normally, when you go to a god man, and we Gujaratis are very good at doing that, we like to do business with them. You know that, standard stuff. We do manta, Gujarati word. Standard stuff, all of us live on it, manta. This thing is not working out, let's do a manta, it will be sorted out. Let me warn you, if you do a manta with this chap, you are going to lose, because he doesn't want your money. So you see, you can't do manta with him. You can't even say we're going to donate it for your temple. He doesn't want it. So if you do manta with him, it's guaranteed to fail. Don't do any mantas, you're asking for trouble. But also let me say something sweet. You see, the graceful personality that accompanied Ramakrishna, this Shardamani, is unusual personality. When she saw that Ramakrishna's own youngsters were struggling, they were struggling, nobody was giving them any money, they were struggling. She said, she told once Ramakrishna, I am going to look after them, you don't interfere. And Ramakrishna said, oh, you are saying so? Okay, I will not interfere. He said, I am going to bless them, that they are going to get, they are going to be well looked after, they'll have a shelter. And she's the one who said, yes, you don't interfere. One day, one boy wanted to eat 4 chapatis, and Ramakrishna, what have they come here for? They've come here for meditation and stuff, not to eat and drink here. I'll give them 2. She said, no, this is none of your business. This is, I am mother, I'm going to give him 4, and I'm going to give him 6. You don't interfere. Ramakrishna, you're going to take responsibility of his spiritual progress? She said, yes. So this Shardamani is the gentle aspect of Ramakrishna. Their mantas might work. I'm just telling you gently. But these are the two great personalities of modern times. And again, let me tell you, even though they gave the grace to the youngsters who came to them, after the grace, these youngsters had to undergo tremendous penances, tremendous austere practices. Sometimes they would be sleeping in Ramakrishna's room. How do they sleep? On the floor with a blanket covering the head, because mosquitoes. They are like birds, they are huge mosquitoes. They would just cover their heads with a blanket and lie there. And at early morning, before the sun rises, Ramakrishna would get up, push them, say, hey, have you come here to sleep? Go in the Panchvati and meditate. So after getting good experience, these guys had no rest. For years, he put in the austerities. The hard discipline came afterwards. Normally, they would ask you to do the hard discipline and then you go to experience. With this person, it's the other way around. Experience first day, out you go. But then you see you are hooked. Because when you have a good experience, you cannot live without it anymore. And the only way you can regain it, regain the kingdom of heaven if you like, is through tremendous austerities. They were hooked. So all the rest of their lives, if you look at them, tremendous austerity, tremendous self-discipline, tremendous self-control throughout their lives, very visible. But you see, they already had the grand prize right at the beginning. And then they were paying installments, if I can say, a bit of HP. This is how they unfolded. One final story before we finish this first phase of Ramakrishna, the bestower of grace. The grace did not just kind of extend to humanity. One day Ramakrishna discovered under his bed a little cat. And, alright, he would sometimes put his hand under to cuddle her and she would come out. They say, people report, the cat would come out and she would understand this is not an ordinary person and pay homage and then disappear under the bed again. But in no time, cats being cats, she had 3 kittens. Now things were getting crowded under the bed. And there are so many disciples coming, so many devotees coming to visit Ramakrishna, and there are cats and kittens underneath. So one day a female disciple came. And these are really lovely stories. One day a female disciple came on her own. Ramakrishna said, come here. Can you do one thing for me? She said, anything. Of course, this is what you tell Ramakrishna. You don't say anything. You say, anything. Say, yes, anything. Yes. Now look under the bed. There's a cat and 3 kittens. I want you to take them and take good care of them. Remember, they've taken shelter under here. See, Ramakrishna never said under me, never said me or mine. That had disappeared a long time ago. He would say they've taken shelter here and point at his body. So make sure they are well taken care of. Do not mistreat them ever. If you promise me, then you take this cat and the kittens. And this lady took the cat and the kittens. And I'm sure the cat and the kittens have found kind of, in their new lives, they would have found a very, if you like, loving relationship with the Ramakrishna again, re-established this relationship. But this grace was very visible. Anybody and everybody who came in his cycle, in his kind of intimate circle, were completely dramatically changed forever, transformed forever. Do you know why? You see, you can have magnets, and these magnets can attract iron filings, can attract nails, even sharp things as well. But the thing is, the unique feature is this. When these iron filings do not have any dirt covering them or any fluff blocking them, they turn into magnets themselves. When you put iron filing in front of magnets, the iron filing becomes a magnet and attracts others. They too become magnets. The only thing is they have to make sure no fluff continues to interfere. And once they shrug off the fluff that is covering them, these little filings with very little capacity, but because they are in front of the master, they too become very dynamic, very powerful personalities who can influence the rest of mankind. This is the story of Ramakrishna. Not only did he bestow grace on his disciples, he turned them into magnets of themselves. They became magnets, giants. And because of their personalities have become imbibed through the spiritual experiences, everything that came out of their mouths would kind of stir up humanity. And of course, we know the most powerful personality, the most powerful magnet is Swami Vivekananda. In days to come, we'll do another katha on Swami Vivekananda. I cannot do him justice in 5 minutes. I will not even attempt it. But we'll do a katha of Vivekananda. You'll see what a powerful magnet was produced. This fireball of spirituality that Ramakrishna threw to the West is going to come to fruition. His teachings are going to come to fruition in this century, in our lifetimes. You see, the Hindus have been brought up on the idea of narrative, storytelling. And we love this idea. Look, even when I'm presenting Ramakrishna, if I put in some stories, it becomes more relevant, easy to digest, easy to become more accessible. They are all aware of the power of storytelling. It's a very important tool the Hindus have discovered, and they've used it very wisely. At the same time, it is necessary for us to continue to evolve, change. Because if we don't evolve, says Darwin, we die. You see, it's central. You need to evolve. So even in the issue on the issue of Katha, we need to evolve. So it has been marvelous to fall back on the stories of Ram and Krishna and the Bhagavad and the Ramayana and the marvelous stories, and they continue to inspire humanity. But as you notice, the modern youth will walk away from this storytelling because the narratives come with a lot of exaggeration, a lot of baggage. And the people who do the narration do not mention this, do not try and highlight the baggage that comes with storytelling, that it would defy rationality, common sense, and it is necessary to kind of put these kind of caveats or health warnings with these kathas. What I have tried to do in my very humble way is to try and present a modern face of Hinduism through narrative, through katha, but hopefully with least amount of exaggeration. I do get carried away too, but with least amount of exaggeration. In fact, I have been very careful to try and understate what actually used to happen. All the kind of very super storytelling I've tried to reduce as much as possible. Let me just start this session with this simple comment. Look at this image. There's nothing there great or grand, colorful, tila, tapka, no outward sign of religion at all. There is no Om, there is no swastika, there is no orange even. No orange, this is the Hindu color. There's nothing there. It seems so simple, so human, and yet it is the most potent image of spirituality in modern stage. Why is it like this? There's a reason behind it. You see, this message is not meant for just the brown colored people of India or the subcontinent of India. It is a universal message, and to show its universality, it had to be of this nature. There is no allegiance with, say, the Vaishnava movement or the Shakta movement or the Shiva movement. There is no allegiance at all. It is open, vast. And the vastness sometimes is best shown by not displaying any imagery at all. This shows this universality. The second aspect of this image is this. It is very human. There is nothing superhuman. It is very human. It appears as if it is too ordinary to be anything special. And yet this is the most potent idea, potent imagery. When you present the most extraordinary in the most ordinary manner, if you like, it is most catching. Because why? Because it relates to us. We are human. We are ordinary. We wish to see these powerful ideas of spirituality presented in human terms, on human basis. And this is what it's all about. People don't realize the potency of this image. And you see, the more I look at it, the more I look, again, let me just show my colors. As I've been doing the katha, I have been struggling. I'm suffering. Do you know why? For two reasons. First, I'm beginning to see my own limitation in presenting this life story. You see, we all have a very limited capacity to absorb or to express the ideas of spiritual, the broad ideas of spiritual that came in his life. We all struggle. And you see, in a way, every time we try and encapsulate this personality, try and come to understand. As I've been doing the story, I've been struggling. Because I'm beginning to recognize my own limitation in trying to present this marvelous, this superb personality of modern Hindus. I'm struggling. Because all the capacity I have, all the ability I might have, falls short of trying to give expression to what he stands for. It falls far short. And I'm beginning to suffer and struggle. There's a second aspect that makes me struggle and suffer. You see, I've been talking about this spiritual experience. I keep saying, you shudder, you fly off, and you realize you see this reality in a different light, in a much more intense manner. I keep talking like that, but it doesn't satisfy me. You see, it must be possible for you to experience this. Otherwise, I'm just talking. I want to infuse this in society. I don't want to just talk about it. I want this feature, this experiential dimension to become, if you like, visible in society. I want to infuse it into society, and I struggle. Again, you see, when we look at the story, sometimes we feel, oh, it seems such a struggle. It's living on chickpeas or algae. Oh dear, we don't want to go down this path. Oh dear friends, you have no clue what struggle. They are in bliss. They are in absolute real, they are having fun. We have no clue of what this fun is all about. Unless you have a glimpse of this spiritual dimension, experiential dimension, you have no idea what this is all about. They are not in pain. There is no problem. All these disciples, they are in full flow. They are living to the full. We are living in shadows, and we are satisfied with shadows. They live with tremendous intensity. They have become awakened. And this idea of not just religion that is kind of comes straight from the books, but religion that is experienced. So everything we see in the story of Ramakrishna is not something that he refers to some textbook and tries to get some verification. He is experienced himself. So it's most simple manner, the most powerful message present in the most simple language, in the most human language. The features about this Ramakrishna, the reason why perhaps India is struggling to make sense of Ramakrishna, in fact perhaps has forgotten Ramakrishna, is this. The message is too grand for them to digest. It's too vast for them to really take on. They struggle. You see, they struggle because the only vision of religion they have is kind of tokenistic, ritualistic, narrative storytelling, singing bhajan, and they have lost this key feature of experiential religion. Religion that you have to experience for yourself, come alive. This is what it stands for. And modern Hindus struggle. They are not really able to take this on, this deeper aspect of religion on. Do you know where it is going to find a home? This is what Kaka was talking about. It's going to find home in the West because it belongs to the greater society, not just the Hindu society. That is why it's struggling in India. And the Hindus will only recognize its potency when the West will declare that what is this, what is this? And this is very visible. You see, one of the most astute thinkers in the West, I mentioned this name before, but I mention it again because people of religion shudder with this name because he's a very great critic of world religions. This gentleman said, Arnold Toynbee, he said, when I look at the story of Ramakrishna, what makes it so unusual is here, in this one personality, in this one lifetime, we see such comprehensive spiritual experiences embedded in just one life, in such a very focused manner, in such a very intense manner, that nobody in the history of mankind has touched this kind of experience before. He makes a declaration, giving the highest dignity to this man, saying that the comprehensive nature of his spiritual experience has perhaps not been had by any other human being in the history of humanity. See, they are recognizing that this is no ordinary personality, and the vastness of this experience is so vast that the world is still not able to fathom it. You see, Vivekananda himself, the master disciple, used to suffer. In fact, he hardly talked about Ramakrishna in his lifetime. Just once or twice he mentioned him. Because he said, look, the moment I open my mouth, I'll do him injustice. I don't have the capacity to understand the depth of this personality. It is that dramatic. Again, how will it become visible? And what is happening in the modern world? Let me touch on that. You see, we are now discovering that in order for many people of many religions to live together, work together, it is crucial to have a different attitude towards religions in general. Can any one religion have monopoly on spirituality? Is it possible that this religion is just captured by just one religion? This idea of spirituality is captured by one religion? Or is it a much vaster idea? This has to be examined, explored, and responded to. Serious challenge coming to the world religions. How can people of different religions live together, work together? How can they do it without compromising their own religion, without stepping on somebody else's territory? How do you resolve this conflict in the name of religion that is very visible in modern society? Through this personality. This is where the reconciliation lies. So whether people of the world like it or not, and sometimes I say this in very dramatic manner with interfaith movement, I say the key feature of this personality, this idea of religious pluralism. There are many pathways for making spiritual progress, and this is not just a ploy, it's not a patronizing comment, it is an acceptance that can be many pathways of spiritual progress. It becomes visible in his life. You can make progress in theistic mode, believe in this and that monotheistic God, on a non-theistic mode by searching for your own essential nature as the spirit, or even in a more science-oriented manner. This becomes visible in his life. So this reconciliation of many different world religions becomes visible in his life. And this is what the modern world is crying out for. At one interfaith group I said, look, I talk about religious pluralism and you cannot show me a side. Don't worry. This idea is very powerful and very potent and very relevant in the times we live in. You can show me a side for the time being. But I give you this warning. You will be singing the glories of pluralism either now or after you become more bloodied. Unless you say bloodshed, you won't appreciate what this person has said. This gives dignity to all different variation of spiritual aspirations without compromise and reconciles them. One personality is able to reconcile them. So you either start singing the glory of religious pluralism now or later on. In days to come, I tell them, you will be worshipping this image as the prophet of pluralism. Prophet who allowed mankind to say, give spiritual democracy to mankind, saying, look, you can promote spirituality in as many different modes as you like, as many different individuals, that many pathways for unfolding spiritually. It has to be that vast. You can no longer narrow it down saying only focus on this particular religion or this sectarian movement and tinkle bells. It won't work anymore. You need to see this ability for every human being, even if he's an atheist, agnostic, to feel that spirituality can be invoked in his mode that suits him. Allow for it. He gives that permission. This is the power of this teaching. Let me tell you why visible this is. You see, at the moment, if you go on British Humanist website, now British Humanists are considered to be the AAA kind of organization that relates to modern youth. They are fed up of ticking their name to a religion. They think we just want to be good human beings and live with this life in a humane manner. That's all we are interested in. And if you go on the British Humanist website, you'll see a tremendous kind of dialogue taking place. Teachings of Ramakrishna interacting very dramatically with the British Humanist Association. Do you know what is happening? They are saying, forget about religion because they cause problem and conflict today. We would rather relate to the idea of just be good human beings and live in a humane manner. Ramakrishna would agree with that. He simply say, yeah, but one part that I wish to kind of drag you further, one place where I wish to drag you further is this. The reason why you must be very humane, look after each other, is not because you are made of the same lump of carbon, but because at a deeper level you are linked to the rest of creation. This is called spiritual humanism, not materialistic humanism. This is, if you like, the contribution to this modern dialogue of where do religions go now? Do we just become good humanists? Before I fly off into philosophy, let me just tell you some stories about what is this pluralism all about and why so many people are excited by what Ramakrishna talks about. He presents it in a very kind of colorful story-like manner, and this is one of the stories he used to do. He said, there is a lake with different banks, different sides of the lake where different people live. All of them go to the water, to the lake side and drink the water. But as they live in different parts of the lake, they have different languages and different ways to approach the lake. And in the town nearby where they meet up, in the marketplace, they start talking. One says, just near my village, I have to take 3 steps down, and there I see some beautiful stuff there. It is so life invigorating, and I drink it. It makes the life valuable. It gives life, marvelous stuff. And I call it Jala. Other villagers from other part of the lake said, there is a very special thing that sustains all of us. We have to take 10 steps and climb down. And we discover this marvelous thing that we drink, and we call it water. And the third bank, another kind of bunch of people are living there. They said, no, we don't climb down 10 steps. That's too much. We just have to take 1 step down and we reach this marvelous stuff, and we take it and we drink it, and we call it pani. Now they start fighting over it. They say, no, to reach this life-invigorating liquid, you need to take so many steps and move in this particular direction, and it's called this. And they come to blows. I said, look, this is the invigorating stuff. It's called Jala. One said, no, pani. One said, no, water. And they're fighting over it without coming to a resolution. And a man who walks by, who is kind of well versed, is kind of well traveled, has seen all the different parts of the lake, meets him and says, why are you fighting? Calm down. All of you are drinking the same stuff. All of you are reaching the same place using different pathways. All of you are giving it different names. But the life invigorating thing that you are talking about is the same. Call it Jala, Pani or water. What difference in the name? And the people say, oh, we never knew that. This is called pluralism. Same idea of spirituality can be approached, invoked, infused using different methodology, given different names, different titles. And provided you see the commonality there, and this is a real commonality, you cannot sit well together, you'll keep fighting over the prescription, the name that you give to this idea. And this Ramakrishna said, same thing. Again, you see, nobody in the history of mankind can confirm that the same spirituality or the same experience is visible through different religions. Only this guy can give accreditation, can rubber stamp it, because he has tried different pathways and reached the same destination. There's an interesting little bit of philosophic part I must touch on. Let me talk about it. You see, at experiential level, doesn't matter which religion you belong to, when you experience this thing called God or the spiritual experience that you gain, it is same. This is the claim of Ramakrishna. Same. The moment you try and give expression to it, try and find words to express it, you will use the format that you are most used to. What else can you do? You can't jump out of yourself and define it. You will use the vocabulary that you possess, depending on your own background, your cultural, historic background. You will use that vocabulary to relate to this spiritual experience. What else can you do? So even though the experience is same, when you give expression to it, you will use different language, different methods. It can't be otherwise. You can't otherwise relate to this experience. And you want to relate to it. You want to tell the other human beings what you experience. So in some cases they will see burning bushes, Judaic tradition. In some cases you see angels, Abrahamic tradition again. In some cases you see enlightenment, Buddhist tradition. In some cases in the Hindu tradition you see all these ideas of gods and goddesses or idea of Atman and Brahman. Variety of different ways. Same experience given different expression. Not because there is a problem, there's no conflict. We're just showing our limitation in trying to come to terms with spirituality. Again, it's a nice story Ramakrishna gives. This is storytelling, power of storytelling. He said, you see, there lived in the sea a frog, sea frogs. They travel a long way and they see the huge ocean and they live in it. One of these days, this sea frog got lost and arrived on land and he was struggling, it was getting dry. He saw a well, and he decided to jump in the well. He jumped in the well, thinking at least I got some liquid here, water here. And he met the well frog, a little frog who had always lived all his life in the well. And they became good friends, started chatting. And the well frog said, where do you come from? I come from the sea. See, what is that? Because the well frog has only seen the well. He has never seen anything outside the well. He says, sea, what is sea? He says, vast. He said, how vast is it? Then he did one hop. Is it from here to here? He hopped once. The sea frog, nodded. He said, no, it's much bigger than just your little hop. So I know how much. 2 hops, that far, that wide. He said, no, it's too little, that's not enough. The well frog said, I'll show you the limits. He leaped from one end of the well to the other end of the well and said, that wide. The sea frog said, no, my friend, you have no clue. And the well frog got annoyed. He said, I'm going to thrash you. How can there be anything bigger than this? This is it, capacity. You are talking nonsense. You don't belong in the well. Go away. I'll thrash you otherwise. The sea frog said, okay, I did my best. He jumped out and went back to the sea. This is the story of spirituality. We can only relate to spirituality with the capacity that we possess. It cannot be any wider. What more can we do? So when we find one person of one religion claiming this is what God is about and he shows the width of his well, we smile. See, we all have different wells and this is the box in which we operate. We cannot think outside the box. And this box is limited to our own capacity. What else can we do? So different religions sit in their own boxes and fight about it. Only a frog that comes from the sea, who has seen the vastness, can say, look, all of you are struggling to make sense of the depth of spirituality, the width of spirituality. And all of you are only, if you like, reflecting a very limited vision of spirituality based on your own little box that you live in. This is the condition of world religions. Again, this width of, this breadth of vision becomes visible in the story of Ram. Again, the storytelling part is very powerful. You can say, yeah, it makes sense now. So all of us in our own way try and relate to the idea of spirituality based on our own capacity. We show our capacity. Look, let me give an example. Suppose this outside the day has been very sunny and you try and capture it on the camera and then you put it on your television screen. And even though the television screen may be very kind of high powered with very high resolution, it can never reflect the reality outside. The pixels will begin to show up. When you look at the detail, the pixels begin to show up. It can never reflect the grand reality outside. This is true of spirituality too. It is so vast and so sweet and so intricate and so lovely that however hard we try to articulate it, we will come to a limit and our peeps begin to squeak. We cannot see the depth. The only way you can view this is through experience. So rather than fight that my religion is right and yours is wrong, why don't I actually experience what my religion is preaching me? Why don't I experience it rather than chat about it or fight about it? This is what comes in the story of Ramakrishna. Why do you want to fight about the pathway? Why don't you hang on to your pathway and go to your destination? Another little story used quite often. Storytelling. Suppose you want to go to the roof of a house. There are various ways you can do it. You can go from the front and use a spiral staircase to climb up, or you can go to the back and use the kind of servants kind of staircase and go up, or you might find the fire escape on the right hand side and go up. You can use various ways to go up. And yet, once you go up, it makes no difference which way you used. Don't you see? The aim is to reach the destination and not worry too much about which pathway you used. So he's telling people of religion, look, if you are serious about religion, stop fighting about religion, go to your destination. Experience this God for yourself. Again, you see, the reason why this figure or this picture is highly important is this. It is telling us that, you see, spirituality is not something that is kind of far away, in the faraway land, in the hereafter, in the heaven. No, it is here. It is in the ordinary. You find the infinite by looking at the intricacies of the finite. Here, in this very finite form, you see spirituality encapsulated, becoming visible in human form, here and now, not in the hereafter. Spirituality not kind of kicked out into the here, in the next world. Here, you catch it, experience it for yourself. This is what it's all about. Making religions relevant in the times that we live in, not in the hereafter. Spiritualizing ourselves and our lives, here and now. This is the key message. And you see, again, the vibrancy with which it comes. See, we may hear about the stories of experiences and all that. We kind of brood over it. What would it be? What would it feel like? Oh, my friend, until you have a glimpse of this experience, you have not lived. You have lived in shadows. It is this experience that makes life worthwhile. And again, how can you verify God? How can you come close to God? Don't you realize you are the spark of this divinity? You are the chip of the old block. You can experience Him in the most intense manner. This is what Ramakrishna was doing day and night. Every time you went into that state of ecstasy, you see spirituality visible here, experienced here, in front of our eyes, in the most ordinary manner, without any superfluous language, very visible. This is what excites me about Ramakrishna. Let me go, kind of take the story a bit further. During this period, as I said, Ramakrishna used to visit people where he thought spiritually enlightened or perhaps making progress spiritually. He would go and visit them. Look at this man, God coming, knocking on your door. When you are ready, He comes and knocks on your door and breaks it open and enters. He used to visit people like that. He visited somebody. Let me just give a little bit of background about this person. He's a great personality of modern India called Vidyasagar. Now, Vidyasagar is a great philanthropist. He is perhaps the best humanist the Hindus produced. A real humanist. Doesn't have to necessarily believe in God, but a real humanist. A major philanthropic worker. If you look at the story of Vidyasagar, it will touch you. It will capture your attention. What a lovely personality. He's a humanist. He's not a believer in God at all. Lovely person. And this Ramakrishna wants to visit him. Before I do that, let me lighten up a little bit and say something about Vidyasagar, because when I heard the story, I found it highly endearing. Now this Vidyasagar, you see, for a humanist, there is no God there, so what do they focus on? Idea of being very moral, idea of being very truthful. He was a stickler for truth, stickler. There's a lovely story about Vidyasagar. When the film industry entered India, he was quite annoyed by it. He said, this is all this lovey-dovey stuff being marketed. So it's not that different from the Bollywood phenomena. But he was already aware of these dangers of this film industry. So he hated the idea of films. He said, this is the way to corrupt human beings, corrupt youngsters. And he's walking in Calcutta, and somebody from the village came over to Calcutta for the express purpose, because he's heard there are cinema houses where you can see cinema on the screen. So he'd come from the village to see a cinema. And he enters Calcutta, and just imagine the poor guy's bad luck. When he's trying to look for the theatre, the cinema house, the only person he managed to find was Vidyasagar. So he tapped him on the shoulder, sir, can you tell me where is the cinema house? And Vidyasagar, the moment the word cinema house, he kind of flares up. He said, I don't know. And he walked away. And this man said, all right, I'll find somebody else. He's still wandering around. In a few more minutes, somebody taps him very hard on his shoulder. He looks back, there's Vidyasagar. He said, look, just now I told you, I don't know. Actually, I know where it is, but I won't tell you. You see, it's a stickler. He was like that. That personality, that sound. You see, we may smile. But to develop this character, that you are establishing truth to this level, is also, if you like, a prerequisite for spiritual progress. It is very much a prerequisite. Here is this Vidyasagar, and this Ramakrishna goes to visit him. The reason why I'm bringing him is because I want to show you the intellectual dimension of Ramakrishna, because this Vidyasagar is a great intellectual. And when they meet, look at the humility of this God-man. He said, today I'm very pleased to meet you, because I seem to have come to the brink of the ocean. Sagar means ocean. And look at the humility of the Vidyasagar too. He said, sir, you come here, very good, but this ocean is full of salty water. Take some salt out. All of you are drinking the same stuff. All of you are reaching the same place using different pathways. All of you are giving it different names. But the life invigorating thing that you are talking about is the same. Call it jala, pani or water. What difference in the name? And the people say, oh, we never knew that. This is called pluralism. Same idea of spirituality can be approached, invoked, infused, using different methodology, given different names, different titles. And, provided you see the commonality there, and this is a real commonality, you cannot sit well together. You'll keep fighting over the prescription, the name that you give to this idea. And this Ramakrishna said, same thing. Again, you see, nobody in the history of mankind can confirm that the same spirituality or the same experience is visible through different religions. Only this guy can give creditation, can rubber stamp it, because he has tried different pathways and reached the same destination. There's an interesting little bit of philosophic part I must touch on. Let me talk about it. You see, at experiential level, doesn't matter which religion you belong to, when you experience this thing called God or the spiritual experience that you gain, it is same. This is the claim of Ramakrishna. Same. The moment you try and give expression to it, try and find words to express it, you will use the format that you are most used to. What else can you do? You can't jump out of yourself and define it. You will use the vocabulary that you possess, depending on your own background, your cultural, historic background. You will use that vocabulary to relate to this spiritual experience. What else can you do? So even though the experience is same, when you give expression to it, you will use different language, different methods. It can't be otherwise. You can't otherwise relate to this experience. And you want to relate to it. You want to tell the other human beings what you experience. So in some cases they will see burning bushes, Judaic tradition. In some cases you see angels, Abrahamic tradition again. In some cases you see enlightenment, Buddhist tradition. In some cases in the Hindu tradition you see all these ideas of gods and goddesses or idea of Atman and Brahman. Variety of different ways. Same experience given different expression. Not because there is a problem, there is no conflict. We're just showing our limitation in trying to come to terms with spirituality. Again, it's a nice story Ramakrishna gives. It's storytelling, power of storytelling. He said, you see, there lived in the sea a frog, sea frogs. They travel a long way and they see the huge ocean and they live in it. One of these days, this sea frog got lost and arrived on land, and he was struggling, it was getting dry. He saw a well, and he decided to jump in the well. He jumped in the well, thinking at least I got some liquid here, water here. And he met the well frog, a little frog who had always lived all his life in the well. And they became good friends, started chatting, and the well frog said, where do you come from? I come from the sea. See, what is that? Because the well frog has only seen the well, he has never seen anything outside the well. He says, sea, what is sea? He says, vast. He said, how vast is it? Then he did one hop. Is it from here to here? He hopped once. The sea frog, nodded. He said, no, it's much bigger than just your little hop. So I know how much. 2 hops, that far, that wide. He said, no, it's too little, that's not enough. The well frog said, I'll show you the limits. He leaped from one end of the well to the other end of the well and said, that wide. The sea frog said, no, my friend, you have no clue. And the well frog got annoyed. He said, I'm going to thrash you. How can there be anything bigger than this? This is it, capacity. You are talking nonsense. You don't belong in the well. Go away. I'll thrash you otherwise. The sea frog said, okay, I did my best. He jumped out and went back to the sea. This is the story of spirituality. We can only relate to spirituality with the capacity that we possess. It cannot be any wider. What more can we do? So when we find one person of one religion claiming this is what God is about, and he shows the depth of the width of his well, we smile. See, we all have different wells, and this is the box in which we operate. We cannot think outside the box. And this box is limited to our own capacity. What else can we do? So different religions sit in their own boxes and fight about it. Only a frog that comes from the sea, who has seen the vastness, can say, look, all of you are struggling to make sense of the depth of spirituality, the width of spirituality. And all of you are only, if you like, reflecting a very limited vision of spirituality based on your own little box that you live in. This is the condition of world religions. Again, this width of, this breadth of vision becomes visible in the story of Ram. Again, the storytelling part is very powerful. You can say, yeah, it makes sense now. So all of us, in our own way, try and relate to the idea of spirituality based on our own capacity. We show our capacity. Look, let me give an example. Suppose this outside, the day has been very sunny, and you try and capture it on the camera, and then you put it on your television screen. And even though the television screen may be very, very kind of, high powered, with very high resolution, it can never reflect the reality outside. The pixels will begin to show up. When you look at the detail, the pixels begin to show up. It can never reflect the grand reality outside. This is true of spirituality too. It is so vast and so sweet and so intricate and so lovely that however hard we try to articulate it, we will come to a limit and our peeps begin to squeak. We cannot see the depth. The only way you can view this is through experience. So rather than fight that my religion is right and yours is wrong, why don't I actually experience what my religion is preaching me? Why don't I experience it rather than chat about it or fight about it? This is what comes in the story of Ramakrishna. Why do you want to fight about the pathway? Why don't you hang on to your pathway and go to your destination? Another little story used quite often. Storytelling. Suppose you want to go to the roof of a house. There are various ways you can do it. You can go from the front and use the spiral staircase to climb up, or you can go to the back and use the kind of servant's kind of staircase and go up, or you might find the fire escape on the right hand side and go up. You can use various ways to go up. And yet, once you go up, it makes no difference which way you used. Don't you see? The aim is to reach the destination and not worry too much about which pathway you used. So he's telling people of religion, look, if you are serious about religion, stop fighting about religion, go to your destination. Experience this God for yourself. Again, you see, the reason why this figure or this picture is highly important is this. It is telling us that, you see, spirituality is not something that is kind of far away, in the faraway land, in the hereafter, in the heaven. No, it is here. It is in the ordinary. You find the infinite by looking at the intricacies of the finite. Here, in this very finite form, you see spirituality encapsulated, becoming visible in human form, here and now, not in the hereafter. Spirituality not kind of kicked out into the here, in the next world. Here, you catch it, experience it for yourself. This is what it's all about. Making religions relevant in the times that we live in, not in the hereafter. Spiritualizing ourselves and our lives here and now. This is the key message. And you see again the vibrancy with which it comes. See, we may hear about the stories of experiences and all that. We kind of brood over it. What would it be? What would it feel like? Oh, my friend, until you have a glimpse of this experience, you have not lived. You have lived in shadows. It is this experience that makes life worthwhile. And again, how can you verify God? How can you come close to God? Don't you realize you are the spark of this divinity? You are the chip of the old block. You can experience Him in the most intense manner. This is what Ramakrishna was doing day and night. Every time you went into that state of ecstasy, you see spirituality visible here, experienced here, in front of our eyes, in the most ordinary manner, without any superfluous language, very visible. This is what excites me about Ramakrishna. Let me go, kind of take the story a bit further. During this period, as I said, Ramakrishna used to visit people where he thought spiritually enlightened, or perhaps making progress spiritually. He would go and visit them. Look at this man, God coming, knocking on your door. When you are ready, He comes and knocks on your door and breaks it open and enters. He used to visit people like that. He visited somebody. Let me just give a little bit of background about this person. He's a great personality of modern India called Vidyasagar. Now, Vidyasagar is a great philanthropist. He is perhaps the best humanist the Hindus produced. A real humanist. Doesn't have to necessarily believe in God, but a real humanist. A major philanthropic worker. If you look at the story of Vidyasagar, it will touch you. It will capture your attention. What a lovely personality. He's a humanist. He's not a believer in God at all. Lovely person. And this Ramakrishna wants to visit him. Before I do that, let me lighten up a little bit and say something about Vidyasagar, because when I heard the story, I found it highly endearing. Now this Vidyasagar, you see, for a humanist, there is no God there. So what do they focus on? Idea of being very moral, idea of being very truthful. He was a stickler for truth. Stickler. There's a lovely story about Vidyasagar. When the film industry entered India, he was quite annoyed by it. He said, this is all this lovey-dovey stuff being marketed. So it's not that different from the Bollywood phenomena. But he was already aware of these dangers of this film industry. So he hated the idea of films. He said, this is the way to corrupt human beings, corrupt youngsters. And he's walking in Calcutta, and somebody from the village came over to Calcutta for the express purpose, because he's heard there are cinema houses where you can see cinema on the screen. So he'd come from the village to see a cinema. And he enters Calcutta, and just imagine the poor guy's bad luck. When he's trying to look for the theatre, the cinema house, the only person he managed to find was Vidyasagar. So he tapped him on the shoulder, sir, can you tell me where is the cinema house? And Vidyasagar, the moment the word cinema house, he kind of flares up. He said, I don't know. And he walked away. And this man said, all right, I'll find somebody else. He's still wandering around. In a few more minutes, somebody taps him very hard on his shoulder. He looks back, there's Vidyasagar. He said, look, just now I told you, I don't know. Actually, I know where it is, but I won't tell you. You see, it's a stickler. He was like that. That personality, that sound. You see, we may smile. But to develop this character, when you are establishing truth to this level, is also, if you like, a prerequisite for spiritual progress. It is very much a prerequisite. Here is this Vidyasagar. And this Ramakrishna goes to visit him. The reason why I'm bringing him is because I want to show you the intellectual dimension of Ramakrishna. Because this Vidyasagar is a great intellectual. And when they meet, Look at the humility of this God-man. He said, today I am very pleased to meet you because I seem to have come to the brink of the ocean. Sagar means ocean. And look at the humility of the Vidyasagar too. He said, sir, you come here, very good, but this ocean is full of salty water. Take some salt out. It is sour. And Ramakrishna said, but you are Vidyasagar, not Avidyasagar. You are safe. This is how they interact. You see the sweetness and the gentleness and the openness. But the discussion that takes place in a way shows the philosophic dimension to Ramakrishna, which I want to highlight. A little bit of philosophy, please bear with me. I've done the funny part about Vidyasagar in the cinema, but now bear with me. You see, the discussion is this. If you think of Atman, or you think of Brahman, and you think of Maya as something that is kind of in a way shrouding Brahman, you are seeing them as two different entities, spirit, or the underpinning to this universe, which is exciting, which is our real nature, which is the real nature of this universe, shrouded, if you like, by Maya. Oh dear, this Maya is a nuisance. This is the way the Hindus have been thinking about Maya and Brahman. They have never managed to reconcile it. Always Maya is vilified as something that's obscuring our knowledge of Brahman. This is the height of philosophy. The resolution comes in the story of Ramakrishna. He said, look, the way we categorize this as two separate things is a mistake. This is the human nature. Whenever we want to categorize, we try and put them in separate boxes. So we say, here is the Brahman, one box, lovely chap. And here is Maya, horrible monster, blocking it. This way of separating creates a conflict. Because in reality, Brahman and Maya are not separate. They are intertwined in the most minute manner. And the lovely example Ramakrishna gives is like this. If you think of milk, and if you think of whiteness, would you say they are separate? They are intertwined. You cannot think of milk without whiteness. They are intertwined. In the same way, Brahman and Maya are intertwined. One is not a villain. It is when Brahman, you see, the thing is, because we try and categorize it as substance and its attribute or something that's influencing substance, we get into this complication. When you see it as one, the spiritual experience becomes very easy. When you see them as one, you do not vilify the world that you see in front of you. This is why Swami Vivekananda says, do not seek God. Just rub your eyes, see God. Don't you see this thing that appears very ordinary is most extraordinary. It is God alone who is sitting in front of you, looking at you through all these eyes. Where else will you look for your God? When you stop seeing them as separate entities, one good, one not so good, you get into complication. When you see them as intertwined, and this thing that is in front of you is nothing but the spirit. It is the same thing. Brahman and Maya combined. You can never have one without the other. This idea of trying to separate them out and just get the Brahman and leave the Maya out is outdated. It may have suited the purpose of Adi Shankara. It does not suit the needs of modern society. To actually divinify mankind, to see spirit as the real nature of this world that we live in, is what comes through Ramakrishna. First time, this idea of spirituality here and now, visible in human terms, comes through the story of Ramakrishna. They are there. See God, don't seek God. Don't you see? It is God alone. What else is all this? You see, where do I find resonance with these ideas? And again, somebody is saying, what is the relevance of Ramakrishna in modern time? I'm showing you where the relevance is. If you look at the Warwick University website, it's a big thing going on, because we are now telling modern science, this is the finding of what, I just touch on it for a few seconds, because otherwise it becomes very heavy. Modern science is telling us, you see this world in front of you? And you think it's made of little lumps of matter? Misunderstanding. This world that you see in front of you is nothing but some principle, difficult to define, we call it quantum, difficult to define, that shudders and appears as this creation. Shudder in existence. Shudder in existence. It's a shudder. And this existence and shudder cannot be separated. They are intertwined. And the universe, you can never experience the universe unless there is this thing in front of you which is nothing but shadow, if you like, shadow in existence. This is reality. Look, my friends, I'm telling you. See, when you see this mundane world, you get caught up because you start classifying, articulating, putting things in boxes. See it in its purest nature, in its pristine nature. It is nothing but spirit in front of us. God here and now, taking on all this variety of different forms. This Ramakrishna was telling me the second, do you know how I experience what I feel? When I look at the whole universe, it appears as if it is stuffed by the same thing with different cases, in different cases. So when I see human beings, I feel the same thing there, but in a different case, like a pillowcase, different pillowcase, but the same stuffing in all of them. I see it like this in front of me. This is what spiritual is about. This is where we dignify humanity. You are the expression of the spirit. It is spirit alone that takes on all these forms and sits in place in front of us. You see, these ideas may sound very outlandish, perhaps very stylish. This is where the world is going to in this century. This idea of seeing spirituality visible in our lives in human terms, in human way. Seeing God in front of us, interacting with the living God, not God in the heavens, but the living God in front of us, dignifying and divinifying whole of humanity. And this is the way forward. And these marvelous ideas are kind of visible in the way this rustic man, this rustic old man presents his experiences. Let me finish this part of the story. You see, Ramakrishna said once in one of his, there are so many magical things he has said, but one thing that he said which caught my attention is this. He said, you know, when you see God with form, suppose you see God as Ram or as Krishna or Mother God, do you know what you are actually seeing? He said, you are seeing yourself, your true self. You are reflecting your true self. You may just put that mold, but the thing that fills the mold is your essential nature. You are seeing your reflection. And we shudder, we say, we never thought that. If you actually experience God as Ram or as Krishna or as Mother Goddess, you are seeing yourself reflected most clearly. That's the mirror you use to see yourself. So they are not separate entities, separate God beings or kind of great deities. You are reflecting yourself in them. When I thought, I shuddered. I said, this has not been visible in the Hindu tradition in the past. Equating you to God? You say, yeah, you are just seeing yourself. And one day he said something very interesting. He said, you see, there are two in this. He would point at his own body. He wouldn't say me or mine. There are two entities here, he would say. And then you know what the two entities are, he said. There is Bhakta and Bhagavati. There is the devotee and the Mother Goddess. Both here. See, that's the interplay of Ramakrishna, of seeing the Mother Goddess interacting, playing, singing, for the same entity coming out from just one personality. Two in the same personality. At later stage in Ramakrishna's life, when these devotees began to suss out that this man is not ordinary in any sense, even though his appearance is most ordinary, he appears to be kind of leading a very simple life and yet is so extraordinary. They began to recognize the potency of this personality. This is how it happened. One day, they were doing worship of Kali. They were planning to do worship of Kali. And Ramakrishna was sitting in his meditation somewhere. And they looked at the image of Kali. And they said, now we've got all this chandan and pushpa and fool and fruit and everything. And we must offer it to Kali. Then you see, these devotees are also now the spark of the same chip. So they are also kind of becoming wise. So they said, now who should we offer this to? This chandan and pushpa, this is Kali Puja tonight. Where do we take it? And they looked at Ramakrishna and they looked at the image. They looked at Ramakrishna and they looked at the image. They said, this is where she is. Not there. Here is she. And they took that and they worshipped him. And this Ramakrishna went into deep meditation, smiling. You may think, is it arrogance? Pure arrogance? Is equating himself? What arrogance? He showed his colors. He showed up. He got caught out. One day, one of the little disciples came and said, he said, look, I'm suffering, like this thing. He said, you are not suffering, you are in full bliss. He said, you rascal, you caught me out. This is Ramakrishna. You see, bearing this guise of an ordinary person is, if you like, God on earth. God on earth, nothing less. You see, when you look at the image of Mother Kali, in fact, Swami Vivekananda said once like this, he said, in days to come, this Ramakrishna will be worshipped as Kali with a beard. And that day is not very far, I can assure you. When you look at the image of Mother Kali, and when you look at the image of Ramakrishna, you see why I say these things. That is the actual image being worshipped in Dakshineshwar in Calcutta. That is the actual image. Yeah? And that is the image of Ramakrishna in deepest of meditation. Difference is just the beard. You see, this image, the world has never seen. God on earth, in His divine form, fully, in full place, in full flow, in his being, in His true being. You see, if you look at the eyes, they are indrawn, and if you see the smile, the enigmatic smile, you see, He knows He is the mother of this creation. This is Ramakrishna. This is the Katha. This is the story of Ramakrishna. God on earth in the most simple manner, in the most humane manner, presenting the vision of religion that is most relevant in the times that we live in. And again, you see, the story is not finished. That's why I'm going to leave the Katha like that. It's an ongoing phenomena. In fact, one great Western thinker said, how to define this Ramakrishna? He's not a personality. He's a phenomena. And I know he got it right. It is a major phenomena unfolding on the modern world stage, where spirituality becomes invoked, becomes visible in this day and age, here and now, not in some antique period, now. See, the story, as I said, will continue. In the next few years, in the next few decades, you will suddenly find that some of these ideas that I'm presenting to you will not only be seen as outlandish or kind of flowery, but be seen as mainstream. They will become mainstream. Humanism will become spiritual humanism. Science will turn to spirituality. Physics will become metaphysics. All by the grace of this one super personality called Ramakrishna. Thank you.